On this episode of That One Movie Podcast, we have our first guest ever, my cousin Nick Barrow, Dune expert extraordinaire, in to help us review Dune Part 2, the long-anticipated sequel to Dune Part 1.
Yeah, we brought it. We shipped him in because we needed the expert here. So we appreciate you being here.
I appreciate having me.
Good to have one qualified person on the podcast for once.
Yeah.
We'll review Dune Part 2. We'll also take a look at American Fiction, another Best Picture nominee. We'll start off spoiler-free for both of those reviews before we dive into spoilers. Otherwise, we're going to talk about some news from this week in the world of entertainment. Holden, what are some of our stories this week?
Yeah, so it'll be a bit of a shorter week with this, but we're going to talk about the trailers for Horizon and American Saga, as well as I Saw the TV Glow. Also talk about some Beef Season 2 updates, as well as a Naked Gun reboot that's apparently being made. So, yeah.
Nice. As always, use the time codes down in the description to jump to whichever segment you want to watch the most. Otherwise, stick around for the whole show. I'm Jimmy Uthi.
I'm Holden Sutter.
I'm Nick Barrow.
And it's time for Tom.
Tom.
That One Movie Podcast.
Tom.
Jimmy, Nick, before we talk about Dune Part 2 and American Fiction, let's do the Toms.
Let's do the Tom.
The Toms.
Toms is the rapid fire segment in which we rate the news of the week in the world of entertainment on a scale of 3 famous Toms: Brokaw, Bombadil, and Bergeron. Brokaw's the highest, Bombadil's the lowest, and Bergeron is somewhere in between. Jimmy, Nick, let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you got that, Nick? You got the. I will help you out.
Yeah, so
I will help you out. It's very
Nick,
complicated.
Nick got my fancy popsicle stick heads this week, so I have the unfinished third set that are just on like card stock here. So
Yeah. So like, you have 2 Brokaws just in case you want to give a double.
That's true.
Thomas, 2 thumbs up.
That's
Brokaw.
really a blank. We're missing that in our normal lineup.
Yeah, we are.
So let's start with trailers. First off, Horizon and American Saga. This is the new Kevin Costner Western movie that he left Yellowstone to make. He amassed his wealth for Yellowstone and he funded this himself. This is his dream project.
It does seem like Kevin Costner's dream.
Yeah.
He's like, what if I could do Dancing with Wolves, but again, in 2 movies?
Take all the credit for it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, I'm like, a big screen Western movie that seems like pretty large budget. That's kind of cool. I'm not a huge Western fan, but it is a genre we don't get a whole lot of anymore. So that's kind of cool. It does kind of seem like a circle jerk for Kevin Costner.
It really does.
It could be pretentious in some ways. I mean, it visually looks great. And I don't know. It's supposedly, Part 1 and Part 2 are both coming out this year, apparently. Supposedly, he wants to make 4 parts total. I bet that depends if 1 and 2 make money, but
the Avatar approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The Avatar approach. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? What else?
I'm kind of with you there. Like, on one hand, big budget, blockbuster, amazing, Western, gorgeous, huge, epic scale, kind of cool. Also, this movie looks like it's a movie from 30 years ago. So is it just like glorification of Manifest Destiny? Like,
Yeah, that's kind of the problem you might run into.
Just glossing over everything. But, whatever. It just seems like a movie for people over the age of 50. I'm like, I cannot wait for my dad to rave about this movie.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
They need movies too, people over 50.
Not everybody can play Red Dead 2.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
This is as closest as people over 50 are going to get.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. So, it's whatever. At least it's not just another spin-off reboot piece of uninspired garbage, I guess.
It's an original movie, if not maybe redundant in some ways, but yeah.
I'm always here for something new and big in scale.
Yeah.
Don't get that a lot.
Anything with the title that has the American flag waving in the background.
that was pretty corny.
What a choice.
I was thinking, I don't think I've ever actually seen anything Kevin Costner is in.
Really?
Yeah, I was trying because I don't think I've seen any of his like '90s stuff. I haven't seen Yellowstone.
Hey, you have no Field of Dreams, no
never seen Field of Dreams.
Dances with Wolves.
Nope. Haven't seen Waterworld.
Waterworld. I haven't. I've only seen the Universal like recreation of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. For me personally, I'll go a Bergeron on this. It might be really good. Depending if there's nothing else coming out that week, we might do it. We'll see. But for the podcast,
It's like Kevin Costner's Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
like
for
his,
there were several shots where I was like, that looks like, just someone farming on Rebel Moon. So
I'm surprised I didn't make that connection before. We're all on Bergeron, all in the middle.
we're
We'll see how it
all
is.
on Bergeron.
I've never seen Yellowstone. I'm assuming you haven't seen Yellowstone, Nick. It
I've
doesn't
not seen
really
Yellowstone.
seem like it.
Sorry.
not really our thing. All right, the other trailer we'll talk about is I Saw the TV Glow, which I'd mentioned to you guys before the podcast. This movie came out of Sundance. I remember hearing a lot of really good things about it. It was kind of one of the standouts, it seems, and it looks like A24 picked it up for distribution. What'd you guys think of this trailer?
Go ahead, Nick.
It was trippy. It was weird, colorful. Kind of got Stranger Things vibes.
Yeah,
I-
definitely has that 80s aesthetic.
Which I think is always fun.
Yeah.
It hasn't. I wouldn't say it's oversaturated yet. So
Yeah.
I welcome it.
Yeah,
You know?
I do too.
Yeah, it just seems like another original like thing that distributed by A24. Just like you could have played that trailer and said, okay, what studios distributed this? So I would say, my first guess would be A24. My second would be Neon.
Yep.
So
Yeah, Nick just watched it before we started recording, and he said that like exact same thing. It's like, yeah, that's an A24 trailer.
Yep.
Which it absolutely does look like that. I mean, it visually looks very interesting. I think the concept is cool. It's like seemingly about this show that they watched as kids that's like weird and maybe there's like a creepypasta like that.
Yes.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you're aware of that,
Yep.
like Candle Cove or whatever.
Totally.
Reminded me of that. So I don't know. It looks interesting. A24. I mean, usually if they put a lot of money behind advertising, it's going to be good or at least interesting. So
I got grown up goosebumps kind of thing.
yeah.
Yep.
Maybe a little Black Mirror, like existential crisis, what's real, what's not real. So, I mean, I'll give it a Broca. I'm not like dying to go watch this one, but it's one that it's like, I hope it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Brokaw for me as well.
Broca's across
Three
the board.
Brokaws.
Look at that. Unanimous agreement, consensus so far.
So that's it for trailers this week. On to the other news, of which there's not a ton. Nick, have you seen the show Beef on Netflix?
I have not actually.
Okay. It's very good. We liked it.
Yeah. I highly recommend. Highly
I'm
recommend.
looking forward to it. It's on my
Yes.
list. Just haven't got around to it. yet.
Yeah. So Beef season 2, apparently in the works, and they're continuing it as like an anthology series. So each season will be different. This one is going to follow two feuding couples. One is played by Charles Melton and Kaylee Spaney. Charles Melton was just in May-December. Kaylee Spaney was Priscilla in the Priscilla movie.
Okay.
And then the other is Anne Hathaway and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh,
So
wow.
don't need to explain them probably. Looking apparently to start filming later this year as the scripts are already finished. So, for me, cast wise, that's pretty good. I mean, I haven't,
absolutely.
yeah, I haven't seen Priscilla. I've heard it's good, but I liked May-December a lot, and obviously Anne Hathaway and Jake Gyllenhaal are great. And I like Beef season 1, so I like the concept. I think just like the concept of just a small little thing escalating over time is so fun. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Beef season 1 too. It seemed like a little bit of lightning in the bottle that just kept getting better and better and better as the show went on. So I would be excited to see this. I hope it's just not one of those things that's like, okay, successful, now make another thing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it seems like now that it's announced, hopefully it was a thing that they had an idea for. They already have all these people attached, that it's a little bit more developed. Maybe whoever the writer is of Beef season 1 or writers like had this kind of idea in the back of their mind, like, oh, if this does well, maybe I can do this. So as long as it's not like a reactionary thing, and if it's good, I quite enjoyed Beef season 1. I do think it is like unique In terms of like, it's very much like about like Asian American culture.
That's true.
In the
Yeah,
United States.
that's a
So it's
big
like
part of the first
this.
season.
I would expect to not have that element to it.
wouldn't
If it
think
did,
so.
it'd be a little be weird how they incorporate it. But I'll be a Brokaw for this one. I think.
Yeah. Brokaw for me.
Definitely
What are
worth
you gonna give it,
watching.
Nick? That's someone who hasn't seen Beef.
I'm gonna go right in the middle.
There
I'm
you go.
excited
Sure.
because you guys are excited. I've heard the first one's good, and I like anthology stuff. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not utilized enough.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I'm here for it. I'll probably watch it.
Slightly off topic. Have you seen the Fargo show at all?
Yes,
Oh God, I love Fargo.
so good,
That's
so
great
good.
anthology series.
It really is.
Next piece of news: Naked Gun, classic '80s comedy film, is being remade. Apparently, this one. Have you seen Naked Gun?
I love Naked Gun.
I love Naked Gun too. Now, initially, I was kind of thinking that too, but so this is apparently going to star Liam Neeson.
okay, hold
Who
on.
his name is remarkably close to
Yeah.
Leslie
Yes.
Nielsen,
Yeah.
which is very confusing.
Which so Liam Neeson, to me, is like a perfect fit because from what I understand, Leslie Nielsen before Naked Gun, he just did serious
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
And so he like played that movie completely straight, and that's kind of what makes that movie work. And then I think Liam Neeson could be good for that. Being directed by Akiva Schaffer, who is good for me because he directed Hot Rod, which I love. Hot Rod.
me too.
He also directed Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping, another very good movie. Coming July 2025, apparently. So Naked Gun, it is kind of a movie that I don't know how, like, I feel like the creative team behind it is so important to it because, they also made Airplane and several movies like that. But at least Liam Neeson, Akiva Schaffer, that makes me interested to see what they could do. So I'm probably closer to a Bergeron personally. Do you have thoughts on it, Jimmy?
I've only seen the first one once, and I think it would be hilarious if they brought back O.J. Simpson.
Very good. I always forget he's in that.
I'm at a Bergeron because I've only seen it once. There are obviously a few gags that stand out in my mind, like the scene where they go to the other room and he just walks in front of the set. Like,
yeah.
So good.
Little things like that I enjoy quite a bit, but I just don't remember it that well. And I'm not super. I don't have a super big attachment to the original.
Yeah.
How many Naked Guns are there?
Three, I think.
Three,
Yeah.
yeah.
I haven't seen the third. I've seen the first two. Okay.
It's a Home Alone situation.
It's a Home Alone situation.
Okay.
more or less. I may have to change my vote. I didn't know who was attached.
Sure,
I
yeah.
just saw that they were rebooting it, and I was like, oh no, we're
We're
so
not,
far removed from that.
we're pretty fluid here. You can change it if you want.
No.
You're not
For
locked in.
our audio only listeners, Nick did flash a bombadil instantaneously at hearing the news. But you're at a Bergeron now?
I think I'm moving it up. I'm
Okay.
pumping it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you really like Naked Gun as well.
I do. I think it's hilarious.
It's so good. I love it. Anyway, next piece of news. This is just kind of a short little thing. Superman Legacy has apparently just been retitled to just Superman, which is interesting because I realized that there hasn't been a movie just called Superman.
So is the
before.
original just like Superman the motion picture?
or the movie or something like that? Something
Pretty sure it's
like
the
that.
movie.
Yeah.
Superman.
So-
The Superman.
The
I don't know.
Superman.
Superman
Which, like-
1978, is that one?
Superman Legacy, I think, as a title would make it stand out more, but at the same time, I think it's kind of a weird, for the first movie to be called Superman.
It does just say
kinda
Superman on everything else. So I think you're a liar.
That's what I
I
was
think you're
saying. Maybe
misinformed.
click on the Wikipedia. Maybe
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
like
Let's do a deep
officially,
dive.
officially titled.
I've never seen Superman 1978. I didn't realize Marlon Brando's in it.
Yeah, he's his dad.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Christopher Reeve is in it. Just kidding.
That would be a myth.
What's it say at the top there?
What it also marketed as Superman the movie.
So we're kind of both right. There.
Yeah, I mean it does say
Everybody
the
wins.
movie under it in the logo. So yeah. I can't wait for this one to be Superman in parentheses 2025.
Yeah, that's what it'll do on Wikipedia.
Well,
for
good
sure.
news, Holden, because our resident Dune expert is also our resident DC expert.
That's
here.
I'm a big DC fan.
So what do you think of this little change? Any thoughts?
It's fine. I've given a lot of thought as to what I think that it's going to be about based on like the other projects that are coming out, and I think that the theme will be legacy. I feel like that's a given.
Sure.
But I don't know if it needs to be in the title. That'll probably be pretty apparent watching the movie. And hearing James Gunn talk about it in an interview, he basically was just like, yeah, when I first wrote it, it was very clear that Superman Legacy was the title, but now that it's like done and locked in, Superman should be the title.
Sure.
And I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Are you excited for this movie then?
I am very excited for this movie.
I am too. I like James Gunn a lot. So even though I'm not I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Superman fan or anything, but just James Gunn's name attached is always good. So
Totally.
Any thoughts, Jimmy?
Yeah, I can't wait for WB to just write it off as a tax. Tax
true.
credit.
Oh my
there.
gosh. Yeah.
They're gonna make the entire DCU and just write it off.
Knowing James Gunn, we'll get a DC project where it's just like Booster Gold watching Coyote versus Acme.
Oh,
There
that's
we go.
great.
There we go.
Watching it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
He'll get around it somehow. James Gunn will come through for us.
There we
Hopefully.
go. I like it.
Yeah, I'll give it a Bergeron. Whatever. it's fine.
Bergeron for me too. I think they should name it Superman the King Dynasty.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's
There you
great. Perfect. And final piece of movie news, just another short little thing. We are getting a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem sequel, and it's coming October 9th, 2026. So still 2.5 years away, but it is happening. Did you see this movie?
Oh, I saw this movie.
You like it?
I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, we both liked it. I think Jimmy liked it more than I did.
I think you liked it more than I did.
I don't know. We just don't remember. Maybe we liked it about the same.
Must have.
It was really good though. I really liked it.
Yeah,
So I'd be interested in a sequel.
I'm here for it. I need Shredder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bring Shredder.
I gotta
That's what they're gonna do. I
Right.
assume. Wait, they teased that at the
that's
end
a
of the movie.
post credit.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
I
almost
forgot.
certain. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this, or should we just go over?
No, it was just good. Just good.
Love
Shredder,
it.
Savage
Okay.
Shredder. What's the subtitle going to be? I'm assuming they're going to do alliteration again.
like Savage Shredder,
Savage Shredder.
Super Shredder,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah. And then we have one piece of gaming news here. We have this little segment. If we have gaming news, we just call it That One Gaming Podcast. It's just kind of a little lame title we give it, but
Well,
it is what it is.
Yeah, endearingly called Togp.
Tog. Yeah,
Nice.
it doesn't work as well as Tomp, but yeah, the one piece, and I know that you had mentioned this at the movie, is that Respawn's Mandalorian game has been canceled like 2 weeks after it was happening. So yeah, when we talked about it on the podcast about 2 weeks ago, that Respawn, the people who made the Jedi like Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order, as well as the Titanfall games, they had a Mandalorian game they were making. It was going to be the single player shooter like game, very linear, focus on bounty hunting. Sounded interesting, but now it's been canceled amid EA having a bunch of shakeups, and like 5% of its whole staff has been laid off or something.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of layoffs in the game industry lately. I think Sony also like this week had a bunch more. So I don't know.
It's like, the games take so long to develop now. It's like you need them to be commercial successes. So it's like,
Yeah.
Yep.
so it's like Rocksteady. I'm like, I hope Rocksteady survives because they spent the last 8.5 years making the Suicide Squad game, and it's just bombing. And you have an opportunity to talk about that later, Nick, as someone who's played it.
Yeah.
I just think it's unfortunate. How is Lucasfilm not? How have they not made Star Wars games? It's like printing off money.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, all they had to do too was continue with the remake of Old Republic.
Oh yeah,
Knights of the Old Republic, because it's beloved. They know it's going to be a hit, and they just couldn't even do that. So I don't know what is going on. Guaranteed money.
Yeah, I don't. It is crazy how they've just been like just not utilizing this property properly. So I was gonna add here that a part of this is EA apparently shifting to quote massive communities, live service games, and large open world games. So
Cool.
why do I think
so
we've talked about it.
10-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, I'm like, and I think we've talked about it on here before. Why, like live service games, 90% of them do not take off, and they cost so much money to make. And I do not understand why people like. I guess it's just like that 10% or whatever are really lucrative, and so people really want it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
They
also
just wanna
if there's a ton of live service games that they can't all be live service games. It doesn't
especially
work like
if
that.
and if they're all owned by the same company,
It's the same problem streaming services have, where they're all competing for all of your time and struggling to do so against one another.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
It's unsustainable because it's like, whereas if you have a single player game, that's like narrative driven. Like there's an end to it, and then they play it, and then they move on. You know, it's like you can go play another game, even if it is a big, even if it is like a 50-hour game. But I just think that we need more shorter games. Like we just need more like 10 to 15-hour games. Like an Arkham City or a Plague Tale, just things like that. I think that are just like that are just not going to take as long to make. And
don't cost as much.
And if it's a single player narrative experience, which I think people are clearly interested in, you can release it and you have it so much more focused. So it's not going to be as buggy. You don't have to have all this time doing these things for it. You could always create like an extra DLC thing for it as an extension, kind of like Left Behind with The Last of Us, or like a Burning Shores for Horizon, that sort of thing, where, here's this extra content that you're actually going to want. And it's not just cosmetics and pay to win nonsense. And because those things already exist, like Fortnite already exists. Do you need another Fortnite?
In defense of Fortnite, I will say, at least with Fortnite, they're constantly adding stuff and changing the game. And that's what I think most live services aren't doing. They're just committing to the cosmetics stuff. Rather than actually adding new content, like new maps, new experiences, stuff like that.
I don't have anything against those games. It's just like if everybody tries to do it, it's not gonna work.
I feel like every 5 years, within that span, you have like 2 or 3 games that actually take off in that space, and then the rest of them are just complete flops and are dead within a couple years. So I feel like, this year, Helldivers 2 is doing quite well, apparently. But most of these just don't take off, unfortunately.
Needless to say,
Bombadil.
I'm gonna go
canceling bad games.
Wrong one, sorry.
Gonna go the other way.
I'm going to go middle of the road because I hate the people that are getting laid off. It sucks that these people put this time into this game and it got canceled. But I really do take pleasure in watching EA go under.
That's okay. That's really a good point. I don't like EA either. So
see, but EA is just going to be bailed out by FIFA and Madden and those and The Sims.
Microsoft will buy them.
True. All right, well, that's it for news this week. With that, Jimmy and I can talk briefly about Popeyes this week, as we do every week. We talk. We talk about our Popeyes visit. We call it TOMPeyes here.
Yes.
Really uneventful though.
Yeah, usually Nick, we do this as a weekly segment. The well has not run dry yet. It is incredible. The
Popeyes, you either have bad food stories to tell, you have like them getting your food wrong or something. You have employees like yelling at each other, customers acting crazy. Popeyes is it's Wild West, really.
It really Popeyes and American Saga. It's Kevin Costner. It's part 2.
Put in his wrong setting.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. It really is.
But yeah, unfortunately this week, Nick, you're here for a pretty boring week because I feel like we got our food and it was nice.
It was just good.
Other than I do want to mention the guy who took our order was the guy that was that yelled at the other Popeyes last week.
So if you've stuck with our continuity over the weeks,
we talked about part 2.
Yeah, we talked about the guy coming in, just starting a conflict with another.
So Nick, there's 2 Popeyes here. We were at the East Side Popeyes, and this guy comes in and starts making this big what-who about just yelling at these people behind the counter. And I had recognized him. I thought he worked at that Popeyes, and that's where I knew him from. But it's probably I just saw him at that other Popeyes.
No, he's been at the East Side one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But he's at the West Side one now, and he took our order. And the whole time I was just thinking, this is the guy that made a whole scene at the Popeyes last week.
Awesome.
We were borderline afraid for our safety at a point. It was half funny and half scary. Does this man have a weapon? This could get violent. But just really good food and uneventful.
Yeah, love me.
What a
Popeyes.
shame!
What a shame!
What a shame! Really,
what a shame.
Not
Where's
good
the
content,
drama?
unfortunately. Yeah, really. But with that, then I suppose we can get on to our non-spoiler review of Dune Part 2. Jimmy.
Yeah, let's do it. Coming at you right after this little jingle. All right, Paul Atreides unites with Chani and the Fremen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the universe, he must prevent a terrible future only he can foresee. There we go. I read the right synopsis this time. I did read Dune Part 1. The first go at this. But here we go. Dune Part 2. This is obviously spoiler free. So if you haven't seen it yet, first off, what are you doing? Go out and see Dune.
Go see this
Go
movie.
see this in the movie theater. What are you doing?
Directed by Denis Villeneuve, as with the first one. Very highly anticipated for both Jimmy and I. Where was this your number one anticipated of the year when we did that list?
Saw 11. But
number
two.
two.
Yeah, number
I think
two.
this was number 3 for me. But yeah, it was very hotly anticipated. Very excited for it. We both liked the first one. And we have a very big Dune fan right here.
That is correct.
You've read how many of the books?
I've read the first 3 books.
Okay.
First one twice. And I've seen the first movie.
Yeah.
12 times.
Wow. 12 times.
I watched it last night.
Oh, last night.
I watched it last night, yeah.
Interesting. All right. I wanted to ask you when we saw the movie, have you seen the David Lynch one?
Yeah, but we don't talk about that.
Okay. I've heard.
Is
I've
it
heard
really
interesting
that?
things.
Is it really not that good?
I don't think it's a very good movie. It's probably fine. But
Okay.
liking the source material as much as I do, like I can't watch it. It's brutal.
Yeah.
It really is.
Fair enough.
I really do want to check it out, though.
You should.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
morbid curiosity in some ways.
It's kind of a fun bad thing, to be honest. Especially now that these new ones have come out. Watching that is like, whoa.
and yeah, you
what
can
happened?
now that we have the full story, you can
Yep.
notice a lot of the changes and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, without further ado, I guess I loved this movie. I liked it more than the first one personally. Loved it a lot. I will say, just for context, I rewatched the first one like 2 nights before seeing this. I was not as big of a fan on the first one as I was before. I still liked it a lot, but I just felt like a lot of the characterization on a lot of the people wasn't there and whatnot. We were missing a lot. It felt kind of empty in that way in some regards.
Sure.
Something that I feel like this movie completely fixes in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would say this one's so much more character driven. It's more, it just feels deeper. Everything in the first movie seems like setting the table in a way that's really entertaining and paced really well and gorgeous.
Great world building in that first
and
one.
it just zips through everything. I love that first movie quite a bit after rewatching it. But this one does have that emotional core to it, or you just have more. I find myself more in the headspace of the characters in this one. I think it takes more time to explore its themes, whereas the first one's just like, here's all this information you need to know in like the least just shove it down your throat way possible, but it's beautiful and all this cool stuff is happening and then it's over, So I really enjoyed this one too. I think it's probably a better movie. Although it's like, I think the first one has a lot of cool like moments in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That I don't know. The first one maybe just like faster, like there's more going on, whereas this is kind of more of an exploration of this culture and the headspaces of the characters in a way that's just also fascinating. So I mean, they're both really good for different reasons.
It really does feel, especially having gone back and watched the first one now, that it's 2 halves of a very long movie.
Well, especially because like this one takes place like immediately after that first one, almost just like maybe days after or something.
Which was smart. It's the way it was changed from the book was the way to do it. I mean, especially with the first one, like you said, being they're just laying the ground for you to just understand this world and kind of who these characters are and what their significance is. So that in the second one, they can really then dive into the characterization as well as the conflict.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's a gorgeous movie. I mean, I don't think that's really hard to believe.
It's more beautiful than the first one. I would say.
Same cinematographer as far as I'm aware.
Fraser.
Yeah,
Rogue
Greg
One
Fraser.
guy.
Yeah, he did. He
Batman
works
as
with
well.
The Batman, that's right.
in The Creator, which I haven't seen from this last year. Yeah, gorgeous movie. Looks fantastic. I mean, some of those just wide shots, sweeping shots of whether it's a battle scene or just, Paul Atreides standing on a literal dune or something. It's so great.
Yeah,
it's so
everything
good.
looks so cool. I especially like from the first one too, having just watched it, like I forgot just how good the cinematography in the second one is. I mean, the first one is great.
Oh, yeah,
this
yeah.
one it's like next level.
Yeah, I would
good.
say it's even better in this one too. Yeah.
And this is one of the first movies in a while where I have not thought about the effects that really went into making everything. It just
Yeah.
felt real. Like, when you watch things, you're like, well, clearly they just did this in the volume.
Yep.
That sort of thing. Where it's this, I was just so immersed into this world.
Incredible. It's like you watch it, you're like, how did this cost less to make than Ant-Man? Like, how is that possible?
It is crazy because this was $190 million budget, which looks like it's already made that budget back almost, which is very good. But yeah, it's crazy that I feel like even like the Marvels this last year was like $250 million, which I didn't just hate the Marvels or anything, but this looks a lot better than that. So.
Incredible. Just, absolutely remarkable. We should say that we saw this at like an XD theater, which is the closest thing we can get locally to an IMAX. And we were the last row of the front section. So we looked up and the screen was our field of vision. Like I could not see anything beyond the screen up or down anywhere.
It was really great placement because like we weren't like so far in the front that the view is warped or anything. But like we were also, as you said, close enough that it was just an immersive screen.
Yeah. Very cool.
And the sound is remarkable in this movie.
The first one, I just was so blown away by the sound. That was the first thing that I came away from that movie like, whoa. And it's, I think that Hans Zimmer clearly just knew exactly what he wanted to do with the soundtrack to this movie.
I think the soundtrack in this one is even better than the first.
agree.
And I feel like I'm going to listen to it quite a bit, actually. It's just a very good, it seems like a good one to have on in the background of things.
Yes.
Fantastic stuff.
It was just perfect. And seeing this in the theater, like your chair just vibrating, like there's sequences where you see like people get to ride the sandworms and stuff. It's like, it's like your POV shots. I'm like, I am riding a sandworm right
I can
now.
only imagine how like transcendent IMAX with this would be.
For real.
Like that's just what we
God.
saw, but like cranked up a notch or two. So that would be incredible, I'm sure. So I absolutely see this on the biggest screen you can, I'd say.
And this movie's long. It's 2 hours 45-ish.
Yes.
It is, but I'm just was so immersed. I haven't been transported by a movie like this long in a long time. Like I usually feel the runtime, even if it's like, Killers of the Flower Moon, very good movie.
Yep.
You feel the runtime. Like it's
Sure,
like, okay.
yeah.
Even Dune Part 1, very good movie. Okay, the last 40 minutes, like, all right, when exactly are we wrapping this up? This one's like 2 hours and 45 minutes wasn't enough.
No.
Like I needed more of this.
They put the gas pedal down and just did not stop till the movie was over.
Absolutely, yeah. It was jam packed. I mean, I think that goes into just how, I mean, and you can speak to this too, how impressive it is they fit this entire story just in 2 movies. Like, I mean, I've never read the book, but you look at the book and that book it's pretty thick. It's a big one.
I would say that they probably cut a fourth to a third of just the book out
Really?
for this
Wow.
movie too. I mean, most of that is just them describing all of like the technology,
which you can
settings.
see and stuff.
Yeah, very Stephen King-esque, like describing things in detail, probably more than it needs to.
Yeah.
Still great though. Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing I want to mention is I one of the things I love with both this and the first one is how it doesn't have to explain everything that's in this world. It's just like things will just happen and you just run with it. You're like, okay, that's fine. The only thing is it really explains are the things that are like really necessary to understand for the story or whatever. But otherwise, there's just like weird technology. In the first movie, there's that weird like that spider creature that's just there. It doesn't appear in this movie at all. Like, there's just really
I love
strange.
that in the first movie, like, oh, my pet can stay here, whatever.
He doesn't
Like,
understand our language.
Benny Gesserit,
She
ladies,
yells
just
at
like,
him. Yeah.
understands it just fine.
Yep.
In the there's in like the Baron, he just like floats. Like that's not explained in the movie at all, but it's just like, yeah, it's fine.
He's got that
a
big thing
big
behind him
machine
too.
thing. Yeah.
Why does he have that? I don't know. Some health stuff, I presumably.
I love it because that is so Dune as well. Because there is some stuff in Dune that's very, like in the book, that is just very like, you have to kind of put the pieces together or it isn't fully explained to you. And I think that Villeneuve fully understands the ability to show you and tell you, instead of having characters tell you what it is, I guess.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
even like, spice in the first one. It's like, it's a hallucinogenic. It's also used for
Yeah,
you just run with
galactic
that.
space travel.
That's literally all you
You
need
get
to know. Yeah.
Like, I know there's other things to it.
Yeah, there
or
is,
like the people, like computers are outlawed or whatever. So like
Yep,
there's
so they have
people
the-
computers. Like
Yep.
so like in Dune Part 2, you like see the Harkonnens, and it's like you can see like the 8 people standing around like making the computer stuff, right?
Yep.
But they don't really explain it.
And that's a huge part of the book, like I said, that's just non-existent in the movie. But it works just fine. I don't think that, that's one of those things, if you are really that invested in the world and you want to know all these things, go read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because it is such a challenging book to read. It really is hard. So much is not said. So much is what you have to pick up on and infer. Or there's nuance to everything that happens. And I think that if you want to read the book, having watched these movies will make it so much more accessible.
Yeah, because you can like imagine the things it's talking about.
You don't have to
very
work
easily.
as hard, and then you can pick up on the things that the movie doesn't say, but that are still happening, almost certainly.
All the characters, because they all have like
Yes.
different sounding names and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. We haven't even really talked about the performances in this, which I think are great across the board. Really,
Yes.
Once again, you can speak to this, but Timothée Chalamet, I think, kills it as Paul Atreides in this,
Yes.
much more so than even in the first one,
Yes.
which I think he's good in the first one.
Yes.
But
I think he was exceptional. I mean, especially in this one, because it is all about this, how this Paul has to deal with like people considering him the Messiah, and like how does is that something he wants to take on? Is it something he wants to reject?
Yep.
And him wrestling with that concept, and where his arc goes throughout this, I think he sells it really well. I've heard people say like Timothée Chalamet would have been a great Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
absolutely. The way he like nailed this performance,
I would
could
agree.
definitely have seen it. And I think it, especially like you said, when you put it together with Part 1, you can really see this full arc, and he absolutely nails it.
It's very impressive because the character of Paul is basically 2 different characters. And the ability to do those 2 characters and make it switch and feel smooth and authentic is just a testament to how talented Timothée Chalamet is.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a concern with some people when he was initially cast. Was is Timothée Chalamet, who hasn't really done something like this before, was he going to be able to sell that kind of turn? But he absolutely did. But the other folks too, great. I mean, Zendaya as Chani, I think she was fantastic.
She was great. I think Rebecca Ferguson needs to really get some praise for that, because her performance in this is crazy.
Yeah.
Especially like compared to the book, like, oh my God. She took the character and did it better than the book. I'm like,
Really?
holy smokes. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Her presence is
Yes.
really good. Like, I'm
Yes.
glad you brought that up, 'cause she doesn't come to the front of the mind for me. Like, there's other stand-up performances I want to talk about, but she is exceptional in her role.
Yes.
And just the whole, I love the Bene Gesserit thing. Like,
Yeah,
the
it's
first time
so
I saw Dune
interesting.
Part
Yes.
1, I was like, I don't know. Like, some of the, like, I'm a very, like, low fantasy person. Like, the more magical things that get, the less interested I usually am. But the Bene Gesserit, the way they
Yes.
incorporate that mysticism with like
Yes.
that political edge to
Yeah,
it, I think
nice
is
combo.
super interesting.
We'll get into it more in spoilers, but the Bene Gesserit are portrayed so well in the second part, and I cannot wait for Messiah if that movie happens, because that
Yeah.
deals a lot more with the Bene Gesserit, and they're just fascinating.
Sure.
Well, and I know that like Denis came out and said that like, he literally described it as a Bene Gesserit adaptation of the book. Like that
Yes.
was the emphasis. And
Yes.
I think, I mean, not having read the book, that was something that was really interesting to me.
Yes.
And the way it worked in the story, and the way it worked through Rebecca Ferguson's character and Paul Atreides and all that, and the Fremen, I just thought was
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
Fascinating. And something I really don't feel like I've seen in a movie.
Yeah.
The way it explores like spirituality and the political
Yes.
nature of it as well.
Yes. I think that it's so interesting because Dune at the end of the day is it really is a fantasy novel more or less, with all these different houses and different entities in this political setting going after one another and having these different characteristics of how they interact with one another is super interesting. And I think that Dune does it so well by showing all these different ones. I'd say the only one that maybe isn't shown as much in the movie is like the Emperor, House Carino.
Oh, yeah.
Is they're just not super present. But I imagine they might do something with that in Messiah.
Yeah.
Third one, if that ever happens.
Yeah, I would have liked more Christopher Walken, I think,
Yeah.
as the Emperor. We do get a little bit of it, but he
Yes.
doesn't have a ton to do.
Not until
Yeah.
towards the end, really.
Maybe
yeah.
if we would have had him more in part 1, maybe
Yeah.
that would have, I mean, yeah.
Yep, and in the book he is very. There's a lot of characters that show up in part 2 that are really from the beginning in the book and carried along, so you get way more development. But that's not to say that this takes away from the movie at all by having them come in later. I do think that this was the best way to kind of do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we see more because they're very interesting, and seeing how they all work together and their dynamics and the history is fascinating.
And I feel like the other performance we should definitely mention is Austin Butler.
I was going to say,
Yes.
Austin Butler's one of the
Yes.
two standouts for me. He was great. I'm not even the biggest. I'm almost like on the anti-Austin Butler train.
Well,
He
yeah,
almost
'cause
is like
I don't.
Yep.
I didn't like Elvis.
Yeah.
Like, I think he
Elvis
was
is
fine.
fine.
He was fine
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Elvis, but
I don't really
yeah.
want to see motorcycle Tom Hardy guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
bike riders
Bike
or something.
riders.
What it's called.
Something like that.
I'm just like, I just am disinterested. He almost gives me like Jared Leto vibes a little bit. He killed it in
Yes.
this movie. He was so good, unrecognizable.
Yes.
Apparently,
Just
he's like
terrifying.
an incredibly nice person in real
Yeah,
life.
cool.
Like,
That's-
yeah.
I've read that.
Yeah, and apparently, like the whole like thing with him being like very method is like overblown and stuff.
Yeah.
He's actually just like a really nice guy who
Little
just
sweet.
gets So cool.
I'm on the Austin Butler
Yes,
bandwagon
let's
now.
go.
You converted me. All you had to do was play a maniacal psychopath
And
and
he's-
kill everybody.
He is fantastic. I
His
think.
character is so true to what makes the character in the book so terrifying and so compelling. I just wish we saw more of him. I mean, that's the
Oh,
only
yeah.
thing. But again, given how it worked out, it's pretty good.
You mentioned that he's like in the book earlier than in this.
Yes, he's in pretty early in the book. I mean,
Okay.
it's yeah. I think that the thing that Austin Butler did so well too with the character is that he took it so close to being too over the top,
Yeah.
but didn't pass over that line. And I don't know how he managed to get that.
Yeah,
close.
he's definitely chewing the scenery,
Yes.
but not too much.
Yes.
He's insane.
He gives me a little bit of like Euron Greyjoy vibes,
Yeah.
where it's like I'm like a psychopath, but also
Yeah.
very politically adept.
Yep.
And I'm kind of watching things happen and almost like an opportunist at the same time. And when the moment comes, I'm going to seize it and I'm going to go for the
Yes.
whole thing.
Yes.
I didn't realize until I was reading about it, but in the David Lynch one, he's played by Sting.
Yeah,
the
dude.
police. That's
Yep.
very funny.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh my god.
The other one I wanted to mention was Javier Bardem as Stilgar.
Yes.
He was the comic relief of the movie, honestly.
was.
He was great.
And he's approached so well as sort of the like very faithful and almost fanatical follower to Paul that the book makes him out to be. It was perfect. It was a great performance.
Oh, loved him. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention before we get on to non-spoilers is I was like the one negative review on Metacritic. I was like curious. I like clicked on it.
Too much sand.
No, that'd be funny.
Is it IndieWire David Ulrich or something?
No, I think it's Boston Globe or
Okay.
something. But I clicked on it, and the main crux of it is they think it's like a white savior movie, which I don't.
I think it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's like sure.
I did write a little bit about this because I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Dune is such a thick book that is very dense and very full of information that is very like a lot of it is like you have to put it together or it's like inferred and nuanced. And I think that because the book is so hard to read, the story comes off as this black and white hero villain thing.
Yeah,
and in reality, the morality is far more gray.
Yeah.
And it is just a testament to how I think the movie did a great job of making that far more clear than the book does.
Yeah.
And far more accessible. So I don't really know how they got to there.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Weird.
Like I feel like you watch the end of
Yeah.
this movie without spoiling it. I don't see how you could come to that conclusion. Like,
It's-
Like, I
especially
don't know.
Rebecca Ferguson and like Lady Jessica's role in it. I'm like, how do you from that performance and what they did? I'm like, how do you get that from there?
In a more conventional movie with like Paul Atreides, helping out the Fremen or whatever, like, yeah, you could come to that conclusion, but it's the way that this movie goes, just that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very
way more nuanced than like an Avatar.
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
In that regard. But yeah. What a just a really good movie.
I loved it.
It's so good.
I really don't have any issues with it.
It's like no notes. Like
Yeah.
like Denis, you absolutely killed it. I don't know. I don't have anything to say. Like this is maybe your best movie. I need to rewatch Blade Runner 2049.
Blade Runner's probably still my top, but I do have a soft spot for that one. But this is
Yes.
close.
I've been grappling with that for the last like 3 days of like trying to figure out like, is it better than Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Is it? So good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Jimmy, who would you recommend this to?
Anybody with a pulse? No, just kidding. Anybody who like, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, like it's Game of Thrones in space with like more to that. I cannot believe that book was written in like the 60s. It seems so beyond its time.
Yes,
yeah.
it is so shocking. The way he handled ecology, environmental themes, and colonialism is just absolutely incredible.
It is like a sci-fi Lord of the Rings. I mean,
Yes.
really it is. I
Yes.
mean, it's this story that just was so pioneering that way ahead of its time.
There is a reason it's as popular as it is.
Yeah.
For sure.
Really, really good. Has aged extremely well. And this has to be one of the greatest book to movie adaptations, right?
Yes, I would say so.
Along with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was
Like,
going to say, a lot of people are saying this is like this generation's Lord of the Rings.
I was just going to bring that up. I was going to say, do you guys think we're seeing the birth of a new, like the newest cinematic level event on scale with like Lord of the Rings in terms of epicness and all that?
I mean, especially just like depending on how Messiah turns out, I definitely
Yes.
could see that since Denis is still going to be doing that one.
Yeah.
So
like anything like if you like the political thrillers, obviously if you saw Dune Part 1 and you liked it, if you haven't seen Dune Part 1, check it out and know that it is, there will be a little bit strange.
Yes.
And it is a little bit, maybe you do want to watch that one twice to really kind of decide whether you like it or not. It's, I don't know. I don't think it is for everybody, but I do think that the people who it's going to hit, the people who like the political thriller, kind of the sci-fi elements of that, if you like, liked Blade Runner 2049, that sort of thing, that I think this can hit that niche for you. And it's so well done that I think, even like my dad was like, oh, I'm going to go home and watch Dune so I can see
That's
Dune
awesome.
Part 2.
I love that.
So
I do think that like even if you're not super into that whole the story sci-fi thing, like even just going and seeing this for the sound design and the cinematography alone, like you're seeing what I think is the new benchmark of blockbuster Hollywood video or like movies.
yeah,
Like I don't. This is the highest we've gotten so far.
I think when I said cinema is officially not dead,
Yes.
like
Yes.
clearly after
the
that.
cinema is not dead. Crowd has gained a powerful ally.
Yes. Just one of Denis has just cemented himself with this. If he was not just a titan of cinema before, he certainly is now. Do you guys think this movie can have any awards steam next year?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so early. I mean, it literally would have to be a whole year. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once was what, April last year? So I mean, that somehow carried the momentum with it all the way till then. But
It has critical appeal. It has like viewer, just general audience appeal. It's super popular. It's probably going to be very relevant with all the memes that are going to come out of it and that kind of thing. I think people will be talking about it for quite a while.
the popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
The popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket alone. I'm so sad we didn't get those.
Yeah, I'm upset too.
I want one of those
They're
for
got to
the
be on
shelf.
eBay. They
for
have
sure,
to.
for sure.
There's a price for everything.
I think a good comparison, though, and granted, I think this movie is a lot better than it, but Black Panther, right? Black Panther was a big movie that had a lot of award steam. That came out in like February.
I was gonna say my comp would be Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Because you have your established director that has been acclaimed forever, but has not gotten the award yet.
Yeah.
With a big movie that beloved by critics, enjoyed by the public as well, made a lot of money, and it's almost like I wonder if Oppenheimer seems to be the favorite for Best Picture this year. I wonder if that helps this movie or hurts this movie in terms of awards that like, okay, you have your Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve. It's almost like difficult to not include them in the same sentence anymore when you're talking about Hollywood directors. So it's like, all right, will he get his due, or will we have to wait until another Denis film? Because certainly he's earned it.
I hope he does.
I definitely think this will at least get nominated for a lot of things, whether or not it wins. I mean, who knows? But
best sound, best cinematography.
Yeah,
I don't know
definitely
who's
the
going to beat him
technical
on
stuff.
cinematography.
Visual
I just
effects.
don't-
He's got to have visual effects in the big. I mean, it will be going up against Furiosa for a lot of these things.
That's true.
Which
Yeah.
Mad Max was a titan.
That's true. That was a big one at the Oscars. Dune was too. So that's depending on how Furiosa turns out, that's going to be close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also going up against If, you know.
That's true. And if is going to sweep. Let's be honest here.
If sweep, here we go.
Holden, you want to give a rating to this, a number?
Yeah, I for me, it's like a 10 out of 10, I'd say, really. I don't have any issues with it, and I loved it. So, yeah, why not? 2 weeks in a row, I give a 10.
There you go. That and Zone of Interest. I just
Very different
I've
movies.
quit assigning numbers. I just shout out my feelings. Would you like to assign a number, or would you like your words? There you go.
10 out of 10, maybe 11 out of 10 because I'm just a
nice.
massive fan.
There
But,
you
like, it was perfect. Like I enjoyed every second of the movie. It was worth the wait. I can't wait to see where they go from here.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I might as well. You know what? 10 out of 10.
Let's go.
Let's just get it. There we go. There we go. 30 out of 30. Let's come back with a spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen it yet, go out to a theater, see it on the biggest screen you can.
do it.
Sit, close but not too close, and just let that sandworm just eat you up. I guess that was a weird way of putting it.
That was a weird way of putting it.
You know,
We'll come back with you. Come right back with spoiler discussion right after this.
All right, spoilers for Dune Part 2.
You are allowed to get a drink, Nick.
I'm allowed to get a
yes,
drink?
you're
Yeah,
allowed to.
I
You're allowed to
drink.
sneak back. Again,
I have
Holden
this cup
has
of water
no
here.
Holden has no regard for the audience.
Gotcha.
He just likes to slurp up.
I'm very thirsty. I'm a thirsty
things.
boy, so.
I don't want to break the sacred rules.
No, there are no sacred
pod.
rules.
Jimmy's even got a cup this time.
I always have a cup.
Oh, you do?
Well, Holden, it's only been 5 years.
I guess I just don't. I don't pay attention to Jimmy. So
he doesn't listen to me. And
Yeah.
it is half
This
the
side
podcast.
of the table is a different world.
it really
is.
is. Yeah. But Nick, do you want to start out talking some of the differences between this and the?
Yes. So I would say one of the biggest differences between this and the book is that in the book, where the first movie ends, there's like a 2-year time gap
Oh, really?
between there and then where this movie basically picks up and starts off.
And that's getting to that. What do you call that place again?
The Siege to Bar.
Siege to Bar. Yeah.
Yes.
So it takes them 2 years to get to the Siege to Bar.
No. They get to Siege to Bar,
And then
like,
they 2 years
it's-
of
there's like a
develop- okay.
2-year gap, and
before Lady Jessica becomes the Reverend, not Reverend, is that right? Reverend
no,
one?
that I should clarify. Sorry.
Okay.
She becomes the Reverend Mother,
Okay.
and Paul they get to Siege to Bar, and it's kind of that whole like they're trying to figure out what to do with these people. But in the movie, the Fremen are not very skeptical at all that Paul is this Messiah. They are kind of on board from the get go. Like,
Yeah.
they pretty much completely believe it. It takes a little convincing when they get there,
Yeah,
but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, you have like Chani and kind of her faction aren't as into the whole like prophecy stuff, but yeah, it's not as you seem to be saying. It doesn't take them nearly as long.
No, and it's a lot more. There's a lot more sort of intermingling with the Fremen that takes place when Lady Jessica and Paul get to Siege to Bar. Like in the book, the guy who Paul kills, I don't know why I can't think of his name. I'm drawing.
Jamis?
Yeah,
Jamis, yeah.
Yeah. Paul, by way of tradition, Fremen tradition, basically like inherits his wife and sons.
Oh,
And so
wow.
Paul becomes like the husband to this Fremen woman and her children, and as a father to their children. And so
Yeah.
he kind of raises these kids a little bit and has a respectful, cordial relationship with this woman who's his wife, but not. He doesn't love her. He's still
Sure.
Shawnee's sort of partner. So that's very interesting, and it's kind of him dealing with that and learning sort of the Fremen customs in that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of going.
Yeah, that's
about
when
it,
he does
learning.
like the first sandworm ride and all that kind of stuff.
How fast did he and Shawnee hit it off in the book? Is there dynamics similar at the start where she's very skeptical but likes his sincerity
Not
as
at
it
all.
is in the movie?
Shawnee is a completely different character in the book. She
Really?
yes, completely
For better
different.
or worse?
I don't want to say for worse because it's still good in the book.
Okay.
But I think it's better in the movie.
Okay.
I think it makes a lot more friction and sort of an interesting story that portrays the idea of like dangerous religious leaders that Frank Herbert was so intent on like telling with that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Shawnee's very skeptical in the movie, and in the book she just kind of, I don't want to say blindly follows Paul, but is like full in on him being this savior figure and is like in awe of him. And there's kind of a power dynamic there that sometimes they hint towards being unhealthy, understandably.
Yeah.
Which makes it pretty interesting in the book in that way, but in this one she's more stronger, independent, and like a free thinker, which I think works a lot better for just the story as a whole, because it really gives the audience, and especially the people who wouldn't pick on the nuance in the book, it gives them a visual kind of representation of like the friction that is being experienced between, this prophecy that they've been heard or they've been told for so long, and like what they're seeing happening right now.
When it's a good baseline to just see how much like the Fremen have changed in like following Paul and blindly and everything. So that's interesting too.
Well, and I almost think I like the nuance of it where it's like it talks, the southern Fremen are much more manipulated by the Bene Gesserit to believe that Paul is the savior, which I love that because presumably their life just absolutely sucks in the South because it seems like it's basically uninhabitable.
Yes.
Which goes to show you that's like the worse your life is, the more manipulated you can be by certain ideologies. So it's like the northern Fremen have it all, still hard, but their lives are a little easier. Their climate's a little bit more like hospitable to them.
Down
So they're
south,
like
what's keeping them going is this prophecy.
Yeah, it's like that's not their only hope. The only thing keeping them alive is so they can see the whatever, I forget the mod. What do they say?
The Mahdi.
The Mahdi, but then what's the whole name? What's the whole name for him?
Oh, the Kwisatz Haderach or whatever.
Yeah, what did they
his-
say?
The voice from the outer world.
Messiah name.
That
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't. They have like 5 different names for Paul,
They do. There's a lot of that like
and they're
science
all foreign
fiction,
sounding thing.
mumbo
Lisan
jumbo.
al Gaib is what I'm trying to
Lisan
think.
al-Gaib.
Yeah, Lisan al Gaib.
I see. Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, it's like you probably remember when Lady Jessica is talking to Alia,
Yeah.
and she tells her like we have to target the weak
Yeah.
in spreading this gospel almost.
I honestly thought we were going to get kind of more of that, like seeing her specifically her perspective targeting people.
Yes.
Which I don't think it's necessarily missed here, but like that could have been interesting too, just seeing how much she's changed with the lifeblood or whatever, and how she's just bonkers now.
Yep. And it's much more direct in the movie. Like in the book, it's a lot more like you pick up on the fact that she's manipulating these people as a Bene Gesserit, but it's not as, you don't have that background information. So in the book, you kind of have to infer it, whereas in this, they show it and you see it, and it's very frightening and almost off-putting. It's done very, very well.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can mention Anya Taylor-Joy. Just in this movie
For
briefly.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a second, is that Anya Taylor-Joy? So see her in Dune Messiah. apparently.
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting. And I was a little worried about talking about it because I thought, maybe it'll be in Dune Messiah, but I've come to the conclusion I don't think it will be. But in the book, Alia is born and is around in the second half of the book, and she's just this toddler running around that is a fully formed person that like talks to people, and it's very creepy,
Weird.
and very, very weird. And I wondered why they didn't cast her when they were talking about the movie. I was like, who's going to be playing her if she's running around as this toddler doing all this?
And
this stuff?
she's the one who kills the Baron, right?
Yeah,
As
yes.
a toddler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you knew that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very weird. The book is far more strange than the movie.
Yeah.
in that way. And
Interesting.
so much of the book too is like describing all of the hallucinations and visions that Paul has in these very abstract ways that's very difficult to understand. And I think the movie handles it so well by just doing these like flashing glimpses and voices talking to him and having them be really brief.
Yeah.
That worked really well.
Yeah. Sweet. So that was another big change that I heard was happening. I think, did you mention that Paul and Shani have a kid as well in the first book?
They do. In that 2-year span, Paul and Shani wind up having a child that, in the movie, you remember when they attack and bomb Siege Bar?
Yeah.
Their child is killed when that
Oh,
happens
wow.
in the
Wow.
book.
Jeez.
So like their infant child is killed, and that really winds up Shani and gets her really upset and angry. But as we know, Paul changes and he turns into that weird sort of cold, calculated dude who has charted all these paths of different futures that he's carefully navigating.
He's like
through.
Doctor Strange.
Yes, yes, but weirder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and more callous.
So does that happen in the book too, right? When he drinks the drink water life, drink
Yeah.
of life, whatever they call it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's interesting because in this movie, kind of the way he changes to that, I think it's an interesting change because he spends a lot of time grappling with what this prophecy and everything, what people expect of him, these visions he's having. He doesn't want to go south.
He downright rejects it. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this.
And it's not until he's like essentially forced his hand, like he has to go do this to like save these people. And he knows this is going to end up bad for a lot of people, but he needs to at least save those close to him and whatever. And that's just so interesting. I love that.
Yes.
And then when he drinks the lifeblood, he changes. So
That's the one, if I had to give a critique, and I don't think it's that important or makes that much of a difference, but I do almost wish that they showed more of, in the book, they show just how horrible the outcomes of Paul's different decisions could be through these visions.
Sure.
And so you see, billions upon billions dying throughout the Imperium in these horrible, horrible ways. And Paul's constantly grappling with that and trying to navigate it. And they do hint at it in the movie, and they do a good job, but it's not nearly as like overt and in your face as it is in the book.
yeah.
You guys ever play, I know Holden, you did, Until Dawn?
I never played.
Okay, where they have like these little totems that you can find. They give you like a little glimpse into the future, and it could be a good thing or a bad thing that could happen. And you're like, but you don't know exactly how to avoid it.
Yes.
You just know that it's one situation. So it's kind of fun in that regard to like, Paul has all
Very
these things.
much.
It's like, okay, what in the book does he know? Like, if I do this, this will happen. I mean, other than like vaguely just going south, or is it like, does he feel like, I know exactly what to do to avoid this situation?
More or less, that is such a complicated question for the books.
Somewhere
and it
in
could
between.
lead to some spoilers, but
Okay.
more or less, yes, he knows what he has to do. He basically knows big events that he has to avoid and key sort of moments that he has to make certain decisions in to avoid catastrophe.
I love that element of it too, because it's like George R. R. Martin is always quotes William Faulkner's like the fiction is all like the greatest fiction is like something along the lines of like the human heart in conflict with itself, right? Like choosing between lose-lose situations. So if Paul has to like choose between two consequences, both of which are like not ideal, that develops his character so much more. It's so much more interesting than it's like, oh, do this, good guys win, do this, bad guys win. And it just, that's so much more interesting and so much more grounded and human than just the simpler stories of a lot of other things.
Completely agree.
So
one of the things I wanted to mention was I like how his visions aren't always 100% correct. It's interesting how that comes up because like there's one specific one I'm thinking of from the first movie where he's in that battle or whatever, and like the mask comes off and it looks like him. But then in this movie, there's a direct parallel to that, and it's Chani instead.
After watching the first movie too, like those flashbacks are done so well. Like the first movie opens with Johnny saying like the sands of Arrakis are beautiful when the sun is low. And in the second movie, she's talking to Paul. I don't know if you remember that, but it's literally the same scene.
Interesting.
And she just says it to him. She's like, the sands of Arrakis are beautiful when the sun is low. So it's ripped from it. It's like this
Interesting
moment of like deja vu. And yeah, like in the first movie, all of his visions are almost right, but slightly off.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing them come to be. And all the visions he's having now are like what could be or is going to happen kind of a thing. And it's very cool. It just changes the dynamic of what's happening.
Yeah,
even more.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Dynamic of what's happening.
Yeah,
even more.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to know is, so in both parts, you have at the very beginning, before you see anything, it's that weird voice,
Yes.
bass boosted voice
Yes.
that talks about like spices,
Yes.
power, whoever
Dreams
controls
or
spice,
whatever.
dream, fears the mind, whatever they say. What is that? What is that a thing from the book? Is that just like
It's sounds very familiar to like just the war chants of the Sardaukar on their planet from the first one. If you remember the guy who's doing the weird chanting.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It could just be a cool sci-fi touch, to be honest with you. But it also could be another thing that potentially could be a spoiler that I don't want to give away.
I think I know what thing you're talking about. I think I've read that too.
Yeah,
I won't mention.
all right, good.
Yes.
There we go.
We're gonna avoid that one.
All right,
just in case. Read the book.
Yeah,
Read the book.
I'll have a few years to catch up.
Do you want me to just go over some of the other
Yeah, go
differences?
for it.
between the book
You got
and
it.
movie?
Yeah,
Just
you
super
got some
quick,
notes. Yeah, go for it.
So, like, I don't know if you remember Thufir Watt, the sort of bigger guy, the Matan.
Yeah,
like,
he's
dude.
gone.
Yes.
Right, he's just gone from this
Huge
second
presence in the book.
His scenes were cut. He had some scenes filmed.
I saw. So I read the Hollywood Report came out with the article yesterday, March 1st, as of when we're recording this, or 2 days ago, whatever that is. And Denis said that was the toughest thing to take out was the fear, whatever his
Thufir
name.
Watt. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny you bring that up because that's where I got the Austin Butler stuff from because there was an interview with him where he had filmed some scenes with Austin Butler apparently, and he talked about how Austin Butler was just like off camera once it stopped rolling, just the nicest guy to him, so friendly.
So what does he do that in the book that's absent here?
So he has a huge role, like super prominent in the book. Totally doesn't matter that they cut it out. It's not necessary. It's just a cool another plot line in the book.
Okay.
He survives that attack on the house, you know.
Yeah.
And
Atreides.
Sorry, it's drawn a blank. And the Baron Harkonnen basically tells him like, "Hey, come be my Matat," which is like the human computer
thing. Yeah.
He's like, "You're a great strategist. What else are you gonna do? If you don't, I'll kill you." Basically, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Thufir Watt's like, "Okay," and does it. Because what the guy who played David Dasmalclean's character,
Yeah.
I forget his name too.
Oh yeah.
He is also very prominent.
I think he dies in the
Does he
first
die?
He
in the
dies
first one?
from
Oh,
the poison when he does the
Oh
tooth thing.
yeah.
He kills
Okay.
everybody
That's
in the room.
right. Yep.
He is killed in the book, I'm pretty sure, by the Baron because he's this master assassin, who's constantly plotting to gain power and trying to essentially take over House Harkonnen.
Okay.
And he openly talks about it with the Baron, and the Baron's like, "I know you're gonna do this." And they have this weird relationship. He's like, "You're waiting for the time, and I know it'll happen, but like, you need to tread carefully." And they have this like standoff power dynamic every time they're talking to each other.
Interesting.
While being completely trusting each other for just ruling and strategic advice. It's very interesting. And evidently, of course, he tries to backstab the Baron. Baron kills him, and then basically that's when he goes to Thufir Watt and was like, "Hey,
Okay.
work for me. I don't have a Matat anymore. I need one. You might as well." And then Thufir Watt kind of starts to get wind that there might be an Atreides still alive because he's one of them and understands their strategy. And when Paul starts using it with the Fremen, he's like, "I think that he might still be alive in the desert," to the Baron. But he doesn't tell the Baron that. He's just like, "Oh my God." So he kind of helps in the background of House Harkonnen and tries to sabotage them and help take them down a little bit. Pretty interesting. But again, nothing super major that was missed in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. I don't think this will come back around, but you might find it interesting. So Lieutenant Kynes, the ecologist, the Imperial ecologist, that is, unless they changed it like canon-wise, that is Shani's mom.
Oh, interesting.
I think she said that, I'm pretty sure Paul said at some point to her, maybe something along the lines of like, "I know you lost a loved one in battle," or something. Maybe, if I'm recalling that right. That's what he's referring to. You wouldn't know that if you hadn't read the book.
Yeah.
But just an interesting little tidbit.
So she's the one in part one who's about to ride a sandworm, and then she gets stabbed by the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
Sardaukar.
which is just one of the big teases in cinematic history.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Especially rewatching it.
Yes.
Denis just toying with us.
I love that guy.
Saying, wait 3 more years.
Yep.
While I'm thinking of it, I wanted to mention that, and this is kind of off topic, but just some of the spoilers wanted to mention. Some of the action scenes in this are incredible.
From the beginning, the very first one is like
it's
incredible.
So good.
I was like, okay, this is going to be a masterpiece.
That plays into the whole like technology thing not making the most sense, but doesn't need to, with like them kind of floating, but kind of not. There's the guy with that, like, has like a gear or something in the back of his head or on his helmet. I'm like, that's so interesting. But yeah, that's so good. And then there's the assault on like the spice thingy, whatever you call it, harvester, which is incredible. Them hiding behind like and going underneath it and everything. That's so cool.
It was incredible.
And then even the assault on the end, at the end, like, it's not that long, but like them riding up on the sandworms looks so cool.
Oh my gosh, the sandworms in this.
The payoff is so amazing in that final battle. It's just like, oh yes, this is everything that I've wanted.
Paul fighting Austin Butler. I can't remember his character.
Fade Routha
is so good. That's a great fight. The quick thing between Gurney and Dave Bautista's character.
I feel like we could have used a little bit more build up to that.
That is my only critique of the movie. And I think it's fine, but that is literally my only critique. Is like, I wish there was a little bit more there.
Yeah.
Just an extended knife fight of some kind.
I kind of like that it was so quick because it cements how pathetic Dave Bautista's character
he really
is.
just got shafted in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
He is pathetic in the book.
Yeah.
So
okay.
They did a very good job of
it's a nice
that.
Yeah, it's a nice dynamic of having like this big intimidating Dave Bautista, and you would think he would be this great warrior or whatever, and then he's just in this movie like not doesn't. And though the other great part was him them getting attacked in the dust or in the spice by the
just
Fremen.
bails out of there.
Looks that's Blade Runner vibes with that
so
with the cinematography there. That's so good.
That would ruled.
Gosh, yeah. I just wanted to mention that.
No, I'm glad you did.
Just the more we talk about it, the more I realize like there is so much to talk about here. I'm like, there's so many sequences and things and just to unpack and dive into, and my goodness.
I loved seeing the Fremen suck the water out of people when they die.
Oh yeah, when they have like Jameis's body, and then it's just like you can like just under the they put the cloth over it and you just
vacuum seal them.
Yep.
I love the idea that they just have that huge underwater, or not underwater, but a huge pool basin there in the.
That's so cool. I wish they got a little more into it, and it is kind of hinted at, but the Fremen have been for years just saving their water and putting it in these pools, despite the fact that some of them like die of thirst.
Yeah,
just like because they have a mission, their purpose to like change Arrakis's nature and to bring back like trees and water and change the environment is so interesting.
Yeah.
So was Arrakis originally the desert planet, or was it originally that and then became that? I understand that they were going to terraform it, but then spice was discovered to be this valuable resource.
The series of Dune takes place over like 2,000 years, and like the lore before it goes even further back. So I think it's kind of no one really knows what the planet used to be like, but the main thing is that they want to terraform it back.
Okay,
sure.
The
Sounds
only
good.
other big spoiler thing that I think I'll say, just to keep it brief, and any other things that you want to know, read the book, please. So, but they made a great change that I think is the most impactful, the most important, and just the best, was the fact that the Bene Gesserit told the Emperor to kill off House Atreides.
Oh, okay.
That is not the case in the book.
All right.
Really?
In the book, the Emperor is just threatened by the nobility of the Atreides and like how kind of agreeable they are to everyone except the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
And is just very jealous. He's jealous of everything that the Atreides have. So he sends them to Arrakis to fucking die. But
so
that's interesting. Then that change.
That gives a lot more agency and kind of just evil intent on the Bene Gesserit, like just selfish.
Yes. I think it makes them so much more interesting. I think it makes the story so much more compelling. It rules.
What's
It's
the-
such a good change.
That is a good change. I like that a lot.
Is the lead Bene Gesserit lady? She's also considered the Reverend Mother. What's her title?
She is the Reverend Mother.
Because she is the Reverend Mother, and Lady Jessica is a different Reverend Mother. Don't they have the same title? But
they have the same title, but it's different. Like there's different
like
levels of Reverend
yeah.
Mother. I think she does have like a technical name that I'm drawing a blank on now, but she is a Reverend Mother. At the end of the
that
day.
actress absolutely killed it as well.
Yeah,
she is so good. She's like she reminds me of like Olenna Tyrell, the lady who played Olenna in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
That just that it's just so good. Just presence. Like I do not want to mess with that lady.
Yeah, no, it is
She's
sold so
just
well.
shook when Paul uses the voice on her too.
Oh yeah. Well, and like she's so good in the first one because she's so like mysterious and you don't really fully understand her motives or whatever, why she's doing what she's doing. And then in this one, like, and she seems to be like in full control. And then in this one, she just like loses it completely.
Yep.
She's like, she basically says like, what have you done? What have I done? Whatever. Like
But she's
in
still
disbelief.
very
like,
tactful.
Yes.
Like she's mastermind politician, like Littlefinger, Lord Baelish pulling the strings, just making everything designed to the Bene Gesserit 1,000-year plan.
If nothing else, get into the world of Dune for the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
They are the most interesting characters at play in like a political epic drama I have ever seen done.
So
it's not even a contest.
Are they? What is their prerogative? Like, what is their goal? Like, just to their own good? Like, so like I'll compare a lot to Game of Thrones just because that's like the other political thriller thing that people can do it.
Yeah.
People can attach it. Like, so you have Lord Baelish, Littlefinger, right?
Yep.
Who's just like his prerogative is just his own power. He wants the Iron Throne. He manipulates everything that way. Then you have like Varys, who's like the moral, Littlefinger, who's like, I manipulate these things and pull these strings for the good of the realm.
Yes.
All right, and he manipulates houses and stuff against each other that way. And then so on a scale to Littlefinger, from Littlefinger to Varys, where did the Bene Gesserit lie? And is Lady Jessica in a different place than
essentially
the Reverend
greater
Mother?
good versus selfish?
That's the
intent.
beauty of, and like the best part of Dune is after Messiah, so much of it involves the Bene Gesserit.
Okay.
That is like pretty much what the rest of the saga is about. They're so well written because you don't know. You don't really know what their motives are. It's mysterious. It's frightening. Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we're doing this to keep peace, basically, in the universe, but we're also trying to further humanity by bringing forth this person who can bridge space and time." That kind of thing. But you never really know. Because sometimes I think Frank Herbert wrote it so that you are yourself being played by thinking you understand what the Bene Gesserit's plans are. And I think it's the perfect level of like not giving it away.
Yeah.
And keeping the mystery there.
Yeah.
I think that was very smart of
Not over-explaining
them to
everything.
do. Yes.
Yeah, they're fascinating, super interesting. The whole, again, spiritual nature of this movie and how Paul fits into that and just taking on this power.
I'm really hopeful. Villeneuve was producing a show about the Bene Gesserit called Dune Sisterhood for
Yeah,
HBO
I
Max.
heard about that. Yeah.
I think it's getting reworked and rewritten a little bit, so it might not have as much to do about the Bene Gesserit, but man, I hope it still does.
very interesting.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
One thing I wanted to mention that I think is funny is I think it's very funny that 10,000 years in the future, that still the most powerful thing we have is nukes.
And that's so funny because there are atomics in the book. They're not nearly as prevalent. I don't know how many people actually have them because they were kind of agreed like, hey, if we use this, like we will have nothing left.
Yeah.
It is very much like a real nuke. Like it's last case scenario. No one wants to use them. They've been pretty much completely outlawed. To use it would be a breaking of conventions that have been in place for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But at the same time in the book, if you shoot a laser beam at a shield, it causes a nuclear explosion. So
Oh, interesting.
that's actually how the nuke at the end of the movie, like during the battle happens, is that the Fremen just shoot a laser at the Emperor's ship and a nuke goes off.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very cool and very goofy and silly like Dune can be. But
Yeah.
I think that they did a very good job making the atomics.
Well, so yeah,
showing the presence.
you know, that brings up a point. I was thinking the whole time, like, they have those lasers that just like cut the ships in half. I'm like, just use that all the time.
Yep.
Like, why not?
Yep.
Which, granted, I'm sure there's some reason why they can't, but
I'm wondering if maybe the whole shield thing does apply, and that's why they don't do it. But it's probably too goofy in a movie like this to tell the general audience, like, hey, a nuke will go off if you shoot a shield with a laser gun.
That's true. That's true.
So in the book, is that like an intended side effect of a shield? Like, don't go at us because this will happen, or is like unintended? Like, oh, we have the shield, but a side effect is there will be a nuke.
Pretty much.
Is it like, oh, it's your problem because you're on the opposite side of the shield and you're gonna get destroyed if you use a laser?
The whole idea is it's explosive enough and that kind of thing that, like, if you were to shoot a shield, from my understanding at least, you're all going to die. Okay. So no one will do it because it's too crazy. It's suicide to do so.
And that's why they have like the bombs that like slowly go through.
Yep. And that's just to penetrate a shield. Because the whole, like, if something comes at it fast, it deflects.
I love the way the shields in Dune work. It's so weird, but it's kind of cool.
It's that perfect level of weirdness that's so compelling.
Yeah, it's very creative.
Well, it seems like something that would actually exist too.
Yeah, you know.
And what's the deal with guns, like in Dune? Because I know like guns aren't like guns
don't work on their shields because they're too fast,
pretty
right?
Much. Yep.
So then nobody uses them.
Nobody uses them. They opt for the blade. There's also some lore stuff involved in there, and some like conventions that all the houses have agreed to engage in that prevents the existence of guns. But also, like, I think it's just kind of a science fiction, like, don't think about it too hard situation.
Well, guns are just not as sexy as swords.
No, they're
either.
not.
They're just not.
Well,
like, there's something intimate about a sword knife
You
fight.
saw
Like
Austin Butler licking that knife.
Yes.
Yeah, for real.
Like, if he licks a gun, it's just not as cool.
Also worth mentioning, the knife fighting in this is so cool, and it's based on actual, like, ancient, like, I think it's Filipino knife fighting.
Oh, really?
Yes, very fascinating. Like, I've learned a little bit of it. That is so lame to say, but it's true. My dad knows
what
how
do you
to do
mean?
it, and he
Ancient
just teaches us
Filipino
how to do
knife
it.
fighting is awesome.
It's fun. It's good for fitness. But
there you go.
I would say there is nothing lame about being on them throw a knife around.
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
super cool because, like, some of the moves in there, like, I know what they're doing, and when you see it happen, it's like, that is so sick. So it's actually like based in
That's
reality
cool.
somewhat, and
That's always good.
very authentic. It's very cool.
I wanted to mention the Harkonnen planet in this is very
Getting
cool.
Prime?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I love. I mean, obviously the black and white because of their like black. I don't know. It's because of their
Black
sun
sun.
or whatever, black sun,
Yep.
which is very interesting. I love their fireworks.
things.
When those were going off, I was like, you guys, this movie's a masterpiece.
So cool.
Like, I have never
liquid,
seen
plasma
anything
something.
like this.
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve has such an ability to just take something and be like, no one's ever seen this before. It's in my head. We're doing it. You know.
Even the fact that the arena was a triangle, I'm like,
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
like,
I didn't even think about
like
that.
that's cool too. Like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And even then the Bene Gesserit just come to manipulate him, and he's a goner.
that's the one scene that Leia Seydoux was in.
Yeah.
Yep. And she was great.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah.
Yep.
The Baron and Austin Butler, they kiss each other twice.
Yeah,
on the lips.
nice on the lips kiss with your uncle.
Yeah,
Which
he goes back in for a second one.
I'm kind of glad they did that because in the book, the Harkonnens are weird. Like, they are weird. And that's just the perfect kind of, like, thing to include where it's just some customs that people would look at and be like, okay.
Interesting,
you know?
Baron tries to kill his nephew,
Yep.
but to test him, like, oh yeah, this is for your good.
yeah.
You proved yourself. Now
Happy
you can
birthday,
you can have Arrakis.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yep.
That whole sequence in the Colosseum was fantastic.
Pretty awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it's my favorite sequence, but one of the standout things is when he rides the worm. I mean, that was
yes, it was so well done.
Very
so
visceral.
cool.
The tension was palpable. It was so cool.
The POV shot
Yes.
of like you being on the worm in the XD theater.
It was suitably disorienting.
transcendent.
Yes.
Just as it would be if you were to ride it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was incredible.
The CGI was incredible. I mean, just remarkable. They nailed everything, and it just felt so real. Again, I didn't have to suspend my disbelief. It just was. It was just like
looked good. It looked
Arrakis
real.
exists.
Yep.
This place all exists. and I'm just here witnessing this story unfold.
Yep.
Incredible.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, everything. One character we haven't really mentioned is the Emperor's daughter, played by Florence Pugh.
Princess Rulin.
Yeah. So my understanding in the book, you have like little excerpts of
Yes.
her journal every chapter.
Every chapter begins with an excerpt of her sort of chronicling the life of Paul and also giving some philosophies
Okay.
on things that have happened. And it's really interesting because like she's talking like way in the future, so you are kind of vaguely hearing about these things that are happening. You're like, how are we gonna get there? So I was glad that they had at least one of those where she was sitting at the table like doing the little holotape.
Yeah, kind of interesting.
Stardate 104.39.
Kind of interesting that they didn't include her at all in the first one because I feel like that still could have worked.
She'll be a massive player if they make Messiah. So
Sure.
It was one of those things where there were some characters that got cast in here that I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine that they're not super prevalent because this is just their introduction.
Yeah. So. Oh, I read an interview that Denis was like when he was talking to Florence Pugh about it. He's like, look, this role's not going to be that big in this movie, and she's like, that's okay. It's going to be bigger in the next one, and I just want to work with you.
Exactly. Like who would turn down that man?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Incredible. She was very good though, and very costuming again too was something that we haven't even talked about.
That's true.
Yeah, that is
set design. Like that's why it's like if this movie, like what movie's going to deserve Best Picture over this? Because like it has every single aspect of filmmaking is a masterful in this.
Yes.
I don't doubt that there could be something that comes very close that's in a completely different genre or something later this year. But especially in the technical awards, I feel like it comes pretty unparalleled. That's going to be very hard to top. So
I mean, like this is why movies exist as a medium.
It's showing what you can do with the medium.
Yep.
And it's got everything, and it's for the masses. It's like it has everything that movies have ever been all in one. And that's why it's just so cool and exciting. And we got to watch it and enjoy it with the theater of people who also are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And once again, like I feel like the one that could come closest in a lot of these ways is Furiosa, if that's really good. So we'll see.
Can he capture lightning in a bottle?
Yeah. I love Fury Road a lot.
Me too. It's going to be hard not to. Just watching the crazy orange sand with the giant trucks running around shooting at each other. Like,
oh my gosh.
There's no way that's not going to at least rule something.
Yeah. Right? At the very least.
But just so good. Are there any other specific like moments we want to talk about? I mean, just musical wise, I really like the love theme that Hans Zimmer wrote.
That's great.
It was just very well done. I mean, just everything was really good. The shots of it's Aaliyah, is that her name?
Yep.
The unborn fetus.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Very well done. I mean, obviously harkening back to 2001.
Yes.
But in a way that was a beautiful homage and. Like, how did they get that effect? It seemed like a Chris Nolan do it in some weird jar and like backlight it. Sort of. It felt like a practical effect. It didn't feel like CGI. So I'm interested to.
If it was CGI, it was very convincing. So,
Oh, the only other thing, the ending of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Pretty.
We should talk about that.
Yeah, it was probably would help, right? Pretty sudden. The book is like it just cuts off and. It's like, wow, I feel like he just stopped writing the book.
Yeah.
But in this, I feel like it wrapped it up pretty well. The only main difference is that, like, again, Shawnee's not at odds with him. But I think that it's a way better choice to have there be friction there.
Shawnee's not at odds with him at the end of the book.
She's all there. And she's totally okay with him marrying Princess Aurelian to take the throne because she understands, like, the necessity of it.
The power thing,
And the only other big aspect that could... or will drastically affect the next movie is that like the great houses not acknowledging his rightful rule now.
Yeah.
In the book, they just are like, okay,
sure,
we're not gonna mess with that. You're emperor. So
interesting. Well, I guess like that change for this, and granted, I don't know how it plays out in the books, but at least for this, it makes it, I guess, more believable that he wages this war because the houses are against him, right?
Yep.
So
100%.
Yeah.
It's like Dune Part 3, man. Dune Messiah. Do you think they call it Part 3 or Messiah?
I think they call it Messiah for sure.
Okay.
I mean, maybe Part 3 Messiah. with a Messiah subtitle.
If Warner Brothers really forces their hand, like people won't know what movie it is.
Yeah,
you know?
but I would guess Dune Messiah probably.
Messiah, a Dune story.
I think it's popular enough now too, where like if you're slapping the Dune logo on there, people are like, "Oh, that's a Dune movie."
Yeah.
you know, it's like so recognizable.
Dune fandom is only, I think, going to increase with this.
Yes.
Like this movie can get weird, not as weird as the book, as you say, in a lot of ways, but it does still get weird maybe for a general audience. But I think it's still like just digestible enough for like anyone who loves a big sci-fi movie to enjoy.
Very much the case.
Yeah.
He did a very good job for a book that has been forever called unadaptable.
Yeah.
And too weird to do. I will be very curious to see how he does Messiah, because that one's even harder to adapt.
Yeah,
so
that's what I've heard.
Full faith,
very
but
bizarre.
I'm here for it.
Apparently, he has most of the script written already. I think he'll. I mean, I think it'd be wise if he waits a little bit, so then you get more of that time gap. Makes more sense.
Yep.
Especially if you have like Anya Taylor-Joy and Timothée Chalamet, who are like the same age in real life.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that.
I am very curious how they're going to make that happen.
But yeah, I don't know.
You think
It'd be
Timothée Chalamet can grow a beard?
I think they might put him in old man makeup.
Honestly,
I'm dead serious. I think they might. Given that the Baron did it, they're already equipped to do that kind of thing. So.
Well, is he that old in Messiah? Isn't it just 12 years? How old is he supposed to be in the book? How old is he?
I think he's only like 17 or 18.
Okay, so
maybe
it's
even
similar.
Yeah. So he won't be that much older, but if they want to age him a little bit, I think they could do.
Well, how old is Chalamet? Chalamet's got to be close to 30, right?
25 to 30 in there somewhere. I think he's like
I think he's older than me. I mean,
let me
you
just
can
double
pull it
check
up
real
here.
quick. 28.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll see.
Yeah. I mean,
just
he and Zendaya could just both play really young people and really old people.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. And the way they set it up, I think they very well may just start from like where they are right now in the next movie.
Oh, really?
Smaller gap. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
given that
because
the houses aren't on board, I could
maybe that's
totally
just the
see-
first. You have like a little prologue where he just
Yeah, that could be
Goes-
interesting. Change the timeline a little bit.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where Paul Atreides is at as a character in
It's
Messiah.
going to be hard for me to, because I'm not going to read Messiah because I'm going to want to just see the movie first probably.
Okay.
But it's going to be hard for me not to want to read it because
If you give it, I don't think it'll destroy your interpretation.
yeah, I'm sure. In some ways though, because I guess maybe just since I've been experiencing the movies first, I kind of want to see the
See it
movie
through to the end,
yeah, and then
that
go back or
totally
whatever.
makes sense.
But
Totally makes sense.
I don't know.
Very,
Great movie.
Very, very good.
Great movie.
So I kind of want to just close this off with what like Denis, it sounds like he wants to do a movie in between. I did not realize this, but Denis is going to make a Cleopatra movie.
Yeah.
With Zendaya.
Oh, I didn't know
Which
that.
is like,
I knew
that is like my dream
that's
movie.
awesome.
I'm like, Cleopatra's like, I think her Julius Caesar.
Yep.
That is like, I think the most
So-
interesting thing that has ever happened in like world history.
Yeah.
So
And the
he's
fact
doing it
that
instead of Gal Gadot and Patty
Apparently.
Jenkins, which is probably
Yeah.
a better choice.
and the fact that Denis
What an
is
upgrade.
doing that with Zendaya, and then apparently they offered the role of Octavian, who's like the villain of the story, to Timothée Chalamet because he's he's Caesar's nephew, so this young up and comer who's just ruthless. I think it'd be
Why not
cool
bring
to
him back?
It'd be really cool to see Chalamet as just like ruthless villain. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know where Messiah's going, but like, and then apparently Daniel Craig has been offered the role of Julius Caesar, which is like not would be off the top of my head, but I'm like, that
would be
is
awesome.
really cool, and I would
be
really
awesome.
like that.
You know what? Knives Out has just made me want to see Daniel Craig in more things
Yeah.
because he's just like
Yes.
I mean, you see him as James Bond, he's good as James Bond, but then you see range with him going as like a goofy detective in that movie. I think he has range to just try new things, so that's interesting.
Absolutely.
So, but then I think in the Hollywood Report, so I learned about that through the Hollywood Reporter article that I read. I'm like, how did I not know this? This is literally my
did.
dream movie. So I'm like, I have that and Dune Messiah that I'm like, I am dying to see both of those movies immediately. The year those come out, those will be my number one
This is a
most
new Saw movie.
anticipated, tied with Saw. I mean, I'm Saw. That's how much I'm looking forward to them. And but it sounds like he may even want to do a project in between that, and apparently it has not. He says it's going to come to light very soon.
Yep.
What that might be, but
Yeah, I heard about that.
I don't know. I'm excited to see
Whatever
obviously
he
what
makes, I'm seated.
Yeah,
I'm seated for it.
Yeah.
He is my favorite director.
Yeah.
he's
I will watch
he has
anything
not
does.
missed.
No.
So I've heard some of his early movies are like, like
From well, like, are you talking like pre-Incendi?
pre-Incendi.
Yeah.
I've heard some of those are kind of mid,
Yeah.
but everything's. I haven't seen Incendi, but everything since then has been.
Have you seen all of them, Nick?
Yeah, I have seen all of them. I think it's just like a case of like being earlier in your career, not having the backing, that kind of thing, and now all of a sudden you have the resources and you can really reach your full potential.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But yeah, I think we're all Blade Runner is his second, or like up there.
Yeah.
with
Blade
his
Runner's
best.
my first,
I'm
I
torn
think,
between
still,
these two.
but
Blade
yeah,
Runner and
it's.
this, so.
The
I mean,
guy, like
all
his
of them.
his worst movie is like Enemy or Arrival. You know, it's like
it's like
a really good movie. Like the man has not missed. Incredible.
So good.
So here's what I'm thinking we'll do. Maybe in real time, we'll jump to our last segment of the show, which is, well, what are you doing? And then in podcast time,
we'll be doing American Fiction
Yes.
next because it'll just you'll notice Nick just vaporize from, but then he'll come back.
we
for the
pruned
last
him.
segment,
We pruned
so-
him, and then we go to the
Yeah.
TVA to bring him back. So the next segment you'll listen to is our non-spoiler review of American Fiction. But for us, we're going to talk about what we've been otherwise reading and watching and that sort of thing. So
What we've been doing.
on to our next segment for you guys, American Fiction non-spoiler review right after this. Monk is a frustrated novelist who's fed up with the establishment that profits from black entertainment that relies on tired and offensive tropes. To prove his point, he uses a pen name to write an outlandish black book on his own, a book that propels him to the heart of hypocrisy and the madness he claims to disdain. Holden, this is American Fiction, nominated for Best Picture, as well as some other awards. What else were you nominated for?
Actor, supporting actor, score, I believe. I mean, I'm on the Wikipedia page. I could probably just look right here.
Then-
Five awards, it says.
One
I don't
thing,
know.
one thing I will say, a very good score, very good soundtrack.
Very
I
good
think.
score,
I think that was
yeah.
one thing that stood out to me from a movie that I was definitely not expecting it from American.
adapted screenplay as well.
Okay, I was not expecting it from this movie, but just really well done. I was like, oh, this is good.
Laura Cartman did it. It was, and she apparently is like a jazz musician. That's like what she was trained at Juilliard. That's what she trained to do. But yeah, it's a great jazzy score. I loved it. This is directed and written by Cord Jefferson, who I didn't recognize. I think this is one of his first movies, if not his first he's directed, but he was one of the main writers apparently on the Watchmen series on HBO.
Oh, really?
Which I'm not sure I would have necessarily picked up from comparing the two, but I mean, that series is fantastic. And so, it's very interesting. This movie, I think is pretty good.
It is.
I don't think it's like amazing or anything. It's very solid. There's a lot of really cool ideas in it, but it is probably my least favorite out of the nominees, Best Picture nominees this year so far. I mean, we haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall, but it's just like a solid movie that I'm not sure necessarily I would say is Best Picture, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say the trailer's a little bit misleading. The trailer makes it seem like more of a comedy than it is. There are certainly moments that are really funny, but it's much more of a drama. Very heavy drama. And I think the dramatic moments are the weaker parts of the movie. I think the comedy part's really good and funny and good commentary. And then when it strays from that, it just feels a little bit more rote.
Yeah, that's trite or whatever. That's kind of how I feel. The comedy aspect's much stronger. I probably in spoilers, I'll mention my thoughts, some of my deeper thoughts on the drama parts, because I feel like there is like kind of an explanation for why it is that way that I was thinking about after having left and seen the movie. But yes, still overall, I would say the drama parts are just a little weaker because it's stuff you've seen before and maybe not necessarily in this exact, amalgamation, but you've seen a lot of these parts before in a lot of other movies. So
yeah, I do like the cast of side characters that come along with Monk, who is Jeffrey Wright. I think they're all very likable.
Which I want to mention, I love that his nickname is Monk.
Yeah.
Since his first name is Thelonious. I think that's just a fun nickname. But Jeffrey Wright is incredible. I think he's very good.
As always. I mean, Jeffrey Wright's a fantastic actor, and I'm glad to see him as a leading man because I feel like he's been a lot of really good side supporting roles.
He sells both the funny and the dramatic bits. I think it's just proves himself as how versatile he can be, despite having like a relatively deadpan kind of delivery in a lot of his stuff. I would say I think it shows his versatility with that, and that it works in just both kind of sides of this movie.
Especially when he takes on the persona of Stag R. Lee, his pen name.
Yeah,
I think that's when his performance really shines and the movie really shines. Otherwise though, I think it's just like it doesn't have enough to push it over the edge for me. Like I really liked parts of it. I like the idea of it, but outside of the pieces that are like in the trailer or kind of go along with that vibe, I just didn't. There weren't other things that would made me really love this movie. It's very solid. It's a very solid movie.
And even the stuff that is a bit more generic, I think is still like it works on its own. Like it's still solid. Like that's where you get a lot of the stuff with like his brother Sterling K. Brown, who's nominated for an Oscar here, and he's very good. And I think it all works. It's just not the most interesting thing, I guess, in a lot of ways. I don't think there's really anything much like to say about like how it's shot. It's just kind of like standard drama comedy movie. Nothing particularly too interesting. There is like, I guess like if you're familiar with the concept of the movie, like he write, or I guess we mentioned it in the synopsis, but he writes this book that kind of under a pseudonym that he thinks plays into kind of black stereotypes and everything. And I think when he's writing that book, that scene is pretty great.
Yeah, that's really well done.
I wish there were more scenes like that. And granted, with the story, I'm not sure where else you could have put it, but like I just love that he's like interacting with the characters and kind of having a conversation with himself.
Yeah, so it's like he's writing the scene in his home office, and you see these characters literally like appear in his home office, and the scene it's like they're actors playing it for him. And then he'll have dialogue with these characters that are in his book. Like, are you sure like you're gonna say that? No, let's try something else. And then they do that. And it's this visualization of the writing process. And that was, like you said, really well done. That was maybe the standout scene of the movie for me.
It was like the most interesting, I would say, just from a storytelling perspective. But other than that, I feel like just a lot of it is just like, it's just solid.
Yeah,
it's just like fine. I'm trying to think of what else.
It's not a must-see for me, unfortunately. It seemed like it has a lot of momentum going for it, and I just don't quite buy into the momentum. I like a lot of the things that happen in it. I feel like, while the score is great, I feel like, and the performances are good, I just don't think it really has a shot at the Oscars with really much of this. I was saying maybe screenplay. Like, I think overall that's okay. And it like, they lots of times like to give screenplay to something that doesn't win Best Picture or just something that maybe doesn't win other things. In some ways, I think of like screenplay as like a second place Best Picture thing, and sometimes, but other than that, I don't think it, Sterling K. Brown's going to lose to Robert Downey Jr. probably. And doesn't stand much of a chance. Yeah. So Holden, what is going to be your rating for this?
I'm at like a 7.5. I think it's a good movie. Nothing fantastic, I would say. It's but if the concept sounds fun, you'll probably like it. I wouldn't say that like the dramatic parts that are a bit more generic are enough to like turn you away from that or anything. I think it's still like you still have that clever satire angle. That it takes a while to get to that point, but
it does surprisingly. You would think it would happen pretty early on in the movie. There's a pretty good chunk that happens before you get to that.
Yeah, and so that's all. It's still there. It's very funny at those moments, but otherwise, solid. Who would you recommend this to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you like the trailer, which seems like a very cop-out answer, so I'll be a little bit more specific. But like, if you like dramedies. You're not going to be scared away by like profanity, a little bit of vulgarity. I would say that Jeffrey Wright's character is pretty unlikable. So if you're really turned off by like a unlikable protagonist, he's not like you hate him, but he's like
I think
kind of curmudgeon-y.
Yeah, it does a really good job of kind of. I at least for me, I spent a lot of the movie thinking like, yeah, I can kind of see where he's coming from and whatnot. But then like towards the latter half, it kind of flips that and puts a lot of his actions in perspective and whatnot. And then you're like, oh yeah, he's maybe good intentioned in some ways, but isn't always doing the best thing.
Yeah.
So.
So he's a little standoffish, that sort of thing. If that is a deal breaker for you, maybe don't check out this movie. Maybe check out something else. But yeah, no, like again, if you like a good dramedy, I think you can buy it video on demand for like $15.
Yeah.
You own it. At least digitally own it. Take with that what you will.
Sure.
Or you can catch it in theater, but like I would go to like a discounted time for this one. I would say like you don't need.
Yeah.
It's not a huge. It's not Dune Part 2. Like you don't need to see this on the big screen. You can watch this,
Absolutely,
on a streaming service one day maybe. It's worth watching, but it's not a must see for me. So that's where I'm at, Holden.
Yeah. Not as much to say about this as Dune.
No, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but that's okay. Yeah. On to spoilers.
Yeah, let's go into spoilers.
All right. Spoilers for American Fiction, Jimmy. He names the book the F word.
Yeah.
which
Well,
you'll
he names it
bleep out.
My Pathology.
Yeah, my pathology.
And then he names it the F word. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you'll bleep out if I say, but
Yeah.
it's pretty funny that he just names it that. It's very good. The whole satire angle of him writing the book, thinking that it's going to go too far. I was thinking about that. It reminds me, there's a Spike Lee movie called Bamboozled from like the early 2000s that I think it's more extreme than this, but has a similar concept in that it's like this black TV producer. And he's like trying to find a show that gets ratings, and he makes like a modern day just like minstrel show.
Oh,
that just like, and it like does really well.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. And it's very abrasive in your face. And obviously Spike Lee is his social commentary and everything. I don't love that movie, but it did remind me of that just in terms of the concept, I guess. But no, him like interacting with the editors and everything, and them just being like, "Oh, this is so real."
Kissing up to him all the time.
Kissing up to him, and he's playing like an ex-convict character essentially, which is so funny when he puts that on. His meeting with the producer,
I like
he's
his
just
little. Yeah.
walking in, he runs away at the sirens or whatever. That's what the producer thinks. I thought that was funny. All of that stuff is just so good. And then him like, he was sure that the book wasn't going to get picked up, but then he's like, okay, well, surely they won't take a book if it's named the F word, right? And then they're like, oh, it's genius. They come up with, they decide
it's raw. It's real.
Raw. All of that is just, it's so good. It's so funny. And John Ortiz plays the
Publisher?
His agent, publicist, guy. Yeah, and he's great. Has your favorite moment in the movie?
Yeah, when he like he's really cringing at what they say on the other side of the phone. He like pretends like blow his brains out.
Yeah,
which then he remembers that Monk's dad literally shot himself with a shotgun.
So he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
He's like, "Oh, my bad. Your dad killed himself," or something like along those lines. It's just the most insensitive.
It was pretty
thing
funny.
That was really, really funny and caught me off guard. Some of that dark humor.
Yeah.
That was a really funny moment. Again, anytime Jeffrey Wright was playing a thug, was hilarious.
So good. His outfit and what he thinks is street or whatever, more like Sesame Street or whatever John Ortiz says.
And I loved the director, the Hollywood guy, who was just buying it completely.
Adam Brody,
he was just such a I don't know what you would do. Like.
Well, he's just. I mean, they describe him as like a producer that makes a lot of Oscar bait movies with like kind of forced commentary in it or whatever. And what is it? His movie that he's making is these people who like this white couple that like gets married and lives on a plantation and then gets haunted by the ghosts of the slaves or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's called like Plantation Annihilation or something like that.
Yeah.
It
elevates it.
Yeah, it's just like, like, you know, people like this probably do exist to an extent in Hollywood. You know, the kinds of movies that they're kind of referring to, but it's just kind of heightened for this movie. It's very funny.
This moron who thinks he's a genius.
Yeah, essentially.
Thing. He's just full of himself. Absolutely. Yeah. I thought that was a good comical character too. I really liked his, oh gosh, what was the name of his like the lady who was the helper lady in his home.
Oh yeah,
was it Jasmine? Let's see. Let's see. Lorraine.
Yeah,
and her relationship with what's the guy's name?
Maynard.
I really liked that. That was very wholesome.
Yeah, that was really
Their
cute.
interactions were just adorable.
Yeah, I loved Lorraine. I liked that she was just kind of like the one, like this family
Monk's
has a
voice of reason, really.
Yeah.
And the one who sees like Monk as like a human and can kind of see his the humanity in him.
The family has like a lot of issues that are, you know, kind of explicitly said later on, and she's just kind of like the one person who's just always there and seems to be pretty chill, I guess. Like, as you said, voice of reason. Yeah, great. I was like surprised that the sister just dies at the beginning of the movie. Because Tracy Ellis Ross, who plays her, first of all, she's second billed, which is very strange. But she's like the lead in Blackish, the female lead in that show and everything. So like I'm familiar with her. I was just surprised that she was in the movie for so little.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you needed all that stuff. Like, I get it. You're like, okay, you have the family.
like-
so it's like his dad committed suicide. His mom has dementia. His sister dies of like cardiac arrest very suddenly, and he can't afford anything. And everybody at his job hates him, and he's very standoffish.
His brother's distant.
His brother's
has his
distant,
own family issues,
and he's gay. So his dad never accepted him. I'm like,
there's a lot.
do we?
here.
I'm like, do we need all that?
So I was alluding to in non-spoilers is I think like the purpose of the drama stuff is like the very thing that is like said in the like satire part of having like a black story that is not like your standard, like, as they say, like, you know, something related with gangs or, you know, slaves or something. I think it's having something a little bit more standard kind of, but just with like a black family. But it is just like regardless, it's still just a thing you've seen a bunch of times. I feel like like you could make it more interesting theoretically, like other than just a family drama you've seen a bunch of other times before. So I don't know.
But like we said, like for all these like nitpicky things, like the movie is very good overall.
Yeah.
It's got a lot going for it. It is very funny. It has that really original creative scene where he's writing the story.
Yeah.
Again,
Keith
more
David.
of that would have been really fun.
Yeah, I wish there was more of that. Kind of disappointed.
Yeah, the relationship with his girlfriend was an interesting thing. His whole like reconciling, like, okay, this Santara author, I was gonna say Lee, but that's his last name.
Santara Golden.
Santara Golden. He seems like, it almost seems like is she like doing the same stick I'm doing sort of thing?
Yeah. It's kind of unclear. There's some jealousy there because of the success she's finding with what he views as like black stereotypes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hadn't really thought about it, but like there was the meeting between them later where she like says, "You haven't even read my book." And I'm like, oh yeah, he hasn't read her book.
No, he just heard the one excerpt and judged her on that.
Yeah,
like, I think that's the
entirely.
big takeaway is like Monk is just a very judgmental person. And I think the line, I don't remember, I think it was the girlfriend who said, you know, like being unable to relate to anyone is not a positive trait to have. Like if you wear it with a badge of honor, but it's not something to be proud of.
Yeah,
something along those lines.
Yeah, he's kind of full of himself. He thinks he thinks of himself like his work and everything. He thinks of himself as like above like what essentially Centaura is writing and whatever. And Centaura has the conversation where she reveals that she put a lot of research into what she was saying, and like, you know, sure, some of what she's writing, you know, has some black stereotypes in it, but it is like very real things that some people live and stuff. So there's no reason, and there's a market for it. So there's like no reason to, you know, turn your nose up on it. Just, you know, full stop. Like,
yeah, the gatekeeping that Monk wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you have the whole scene in the library or the bookstore where he's like trying to move his books to the mythology section and that sort of thing. I did like the analogy of like all the Johnny Walker bourbons or whatever. It's like,
yeah,
you can have
that was a really good
I was like,
metaphor, yeah.
I'm really tracking you here. Like, I'm convinced. I'm sold. Like, you sell your crap one so you can
Under a
write your good
pseudonym.
one.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to use, the Johnny Walker name. You could, man, he made a lot of money very quickly.
Yeah. Insane.
Man, I should just write a book, Holden, if that's that easy, huh?
Yeah. I feel like there was something I remember when I was watching the movie, I had some issue with his motivation for writing it or something. I can't remember.
But I mean, like, okay, even if it is a gag, like, you wrote like 300 pages. So it's like, and it seems like he like does it overnight.
Yeah, in a very
like,
short amount of time.
I feel like you could have done like, if his publicist is in it a little bit more, his agent, whatever, if you have like, okay, yeah, no, really, like, okay, you got this. No, like, add more, like, like more of this. Like, oh, you need to say this more. You got to that's too smart. Like, take that out. Like, really developing it to like totally go all in. And I feel like more of the all in stuff is after the fact of writing the book. You get just a little bit of it in that one creative scene that we're talking about where he's having the dialogue with his own fictional characters. But I don't know. I think that would have been more entertaining to watch and a little bit more believable, because it's like, how do you write something that's like 300 pages that you're just not attached to at all?
Well, and honestly, I almost think like the money aspect of it being a driving factor, a more important driving factor, would have been more interesting, right? Like, he sees the amount of money that Centaura is making, the deal she's getting and everything, and he needs money because his mom's going to need to go into hospice or retirement home or whatever. And, you know, there's all these things that are piling up. And so, you know, it would be interesting with him kind of, you know, grappling with what he's doing and everything. And I understand that, you know, the reason he is that way from the beginning is because he thinks of himself as above this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I feel like money being a driving force, more of a driving force, could have been almost more interesting.
Which, yeah.
When it seems like he's
there. It seems like, oh yeah, I don't want to do like.
He's entirely doing it, or at least seemingly just, you know, because he as a joke, really.
Yeah.
Like,
or in spite or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like he does need money, so it is weird that they didn't lean into that more. Yeah. And then he's just a jerk about like, oh, you're my girlfriend, not my accountant or my bookkeeper or whatever it says. Like
off-color things like that.
Yeah. I don't. I think that's a little bit of my problem with it. Is like he's such a jerk to everybody.
A lot of times, he is.
I mean, he is like understanding, but like you said, he just doesn't relate to other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it has a lot going for it. I don't think it's just didn't transcend that like solid rating for me.
Sterling K. Brown, his whole thing with like grappling with the fact that, you know, he's gay and his father never knew that and whatever, and his mother is clearly like, I mean, his mother's not all there, but like doesn't seem like she'd necessarily be the most supportive of it or whatever if she was. I think that was all pretty interesting. Probably some of the more interesting stuff of like the drama half of the movie.
Yeah. Again, I feel like you could have taken that out though.
Yeah.
It's the same movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of my problem with it.
I was
It
kind
just
of like,
didn't feel like a tight movie. It felt like a movie with a lot of ideas and didn't know which ones it should focus on.
yeah.
So I guess that's where I'm at. Like those things were good, but it didn't really add anything
Yeah.
that substantial for me.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Other than just here's more conflict for the story.
Yeah, really. And that's really all it was. I guess towards the end you have like the fake endings of the
Yeah.
movie, which was interesting. I like how
That was kind of like that. It was a little bit like that scene earlier, and I did
Yeah.
enjoy that quite a bit. Like, oh, what is the next ending he's going to suggest?
getting gunned down by the police, which
Was
is the one they
funny.
take, right?
Funny,
Yeah,
like
that
genius.
one's pretty funny.
It's raw. It's real.
You
know?
said it reminded you of the Weird Al movie.
Yeah, it very much did remind me of the end of the Weird Al Yankovic movie.
But yeah, I liked all of his different, because all the endings he proposes are like ones you could see like existing in a real movie, and are endings you've seen before, like Cut to Black, or
Whiplash-esque.
yeah, him going to reunite with the girl, but you don't really know if they get back together or whatever. Yeah, that was all quite good. So I don't know.
I mean, that's where I'm at. I feel like there's just not as much to say about this one.
Yeah, not a ton to say. It's
It's one that I don't need to see again, which is kind of a bummer because I was looking
And now
forward
you
to seeing
own
this.
it.
Yeah, now I own it digitally
yeah,
for whatever that means.
yeah, true.
It's just unfortunate. I don't think it was an expectations thing either. It was just like, oh, I thought it was going to be a little bit more than it was. It was very solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have it at the bottom of our best picture rankings.
Yeah,
so far. We'll of course get Anatomy of a Fall to you next week. Our review there. But Holden, anything else to say about this?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, then let's go on to our last segment of the show, which of course is What Are You Doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing?
All right.
A little podcasting magic.
Yeah.
Nick, you're back. Welcome.
We're back for
It's good
our-
that you came and dressed up in the exact same clothes 6 days later.
I
We
did,
appreciate
I did.
the extra effort.
No problem.
great.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
I ironed them and everything.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Well, we
Vacuum
also came in our same clothes too.
Yes.
Like
don't sell yourselves.
But we're
short.
we're
Okay.
professionals.
That's true. These are our outfits every week, even though I'm
Yes.
not sure I've ever worn this shirt on this podcast.
Oh, you
but
certainly have.
Oh,
yeah,
probably.
certainly.
it's in the rotation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Nick, for this segment, we just talk about things that we've watched or played or whatever this week.
Cool.
We just like to give little impressions on those things. So
Love it.
I'll go first usually. So this week I've finished the Mr. and Mrs. Smith Amazon Prime show. Actually very good. Really liked it.
Right
I wasn't really expecting, like, because I don't really like the movie that much. I wasn't really expecting much, but Donald Glover and Maya Erskine, who's Mrs. Smith, they're both so good. I think the way each episode kind of focuses on different like marital like stages or issues or whatever, and then it like the spy stuff is kind of like dressing for that. I think that's very interesting how it approaches it. Very episodic, but the finale is fantastic. Hope they make a season 2. It ends on a cliffhanger. So really liked it. Last week I watched Drive Away Dolls.
Oh,
Yeah, the new one of the Coens. right?
Ethan Coen. So after watching this, I'm like, Ethan Coen must be the silly one. Joel Coen must be the serious one, because
Yeah.
Joel Coen made the Macbeth movie
Yep.
overly serious. This one is, I think, too goofy in some ways. I think it's almost to a fault. I think it's funny. It has a lot of that Coen brothers charm that you like from their sillier movies, like A Raising Arizona or something. But the biggest problem I have with this is that there are some very strange editing choices in this movie, like mostly with transitions. I don't want to sell it short like this, but in my mind, I was thinking like iMovie transitions kind of thing. Like it felt like
Spaceballs, like, oh, nice dissolve.
yeah, that kind of thing. It felt like it was I don't know, it was very in your face, and I was like, I don't think this really works. I feel like
Just
that's
like
more
the
of a
star one. That
yeah,
just
well, I mean,
comes
it's
out like that.
It's maybe not that bad, but it's not too dissimilar.
Windows Movie Maker.
yeah.
I think it's very short. I think it's like 80 some minutes, but I think the performances are very good. I think the story's a little underbaked. It probably could have been longer, but I think very good performances, very funny in some regards. So yeah, if you like Coen Brothers movies, doesn't take much out of your time, but maybe wait until it's on streaming or something. And then the last thing I want to mention is I got the new Final Fantasy game, which I have been playing a lot. Have you ever played any Final Fantasy at all?
No.
That's fair. Neither has Jimmy, so I'm just talking.
I played the Final Fantasy VII demo.
There you go.
Hey.
That's something. No, the new game, it's so good. I've put a lot of time into it so far. It's apparently very long too, but I think it's overall a step up from the first part of the remake trilogy. I would say the one thing about it is the graphics versus performance mode that a lot of PS5 games have. I don't think either one of them is very good in this game.
Okay.
Because I think
I've heard performance mode like that really takes a hit. Like, visually.
So I've heard that apparently they've like announced there's a patch coming for it, so it might get better in the coming weeks. But performance mode I'm doing right now because the open world is very detailed, and running 30 FPS through that was like hurting my brain. It was like so much with it just running at a little, and I don't like to think I'm a frame rate snob too much, but with the graphics mode, it was like, gosh, it was just like giving me a headache. And performance mode's running smoothly and looks a little worse, but it's mostly the lighting that I think I have issues with on performance mode. But
a lot of that too comes down to like motion blur and stuff. For like a 30 frames per second game can look so much better with really good motion blur, like Uncharted 4 or something like that. That has it's really fine tuned and the animations are very solid. So it's like if you don't take the extra time to really craft that, a 30 frames per second can be a lot choppier.
Sure. Yeah, but other than that, I think that's all I've done this week. Usually, I talk for a lot longer at this section than Jimmy does.
Yeah,
I have less of a life, I think, than Jimmy. So.
No, you have more of a life.
Well, more of a because I'm watching stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but should we do Nick or you?
Well, I can just say I haven't done much other than just play a little bit more Plague Tale Requiem.
Sure.
Cool. And I got the movie, a lot of the movie posters up. So there we go.
There
we go.
It's looking good.
But I did Nick want to provide you with a little bit of a platform here to share your thoughts about Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, because you're someone who has enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and I don't think we have a lot of people on the internet. Who have enjoyed it. So let's hear what you like about it, and maybe your little sales pitch for Rocksteady here to save their company.
Financially, I don't know, but I think Rocksteady design wise is not dead. I still think they have it. I think that the game is not. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I don't think it lives up to Arkham Knight, but Arkham Knight also had 2 games that came before that got into that sort of position. But I think the game is very fun. I think it's super fun. People call it boring, and I just cannot get that or wrap my head around that at all, because the combat is easily as satisfying and more engaging than like the Arkham games. It's very Dune-like, where it's based on just constantly moving around, which I think is great. If you're a superhero that's not Batman, being able to move around super fast is a dream come true. That's exactly what you want. And it's super fun. He's just going from location to location. The traversal is great. And once you get the hang of it, like, you get better and better. You just feel cool. And that's part of what you can ask for.
The movement looked very cool in the trailers and everything. That's something I definitely agree with.
And Holden, you're a massive Doom fan. Doom with an M.
With an M, not Dune. I actually thought you said Dune at first, but then you were talking like movement. I'm like, I think probably Doom. Yeah, I love both Doom and Doom Eternal. They're great. So
I think it's very fun. I think you'll find it satisfying. It's not. I wouldn't say it's as deep as Dune, but it is still very it has the same like fun factor of the combat. So I love that. The enemies can get a little repetitive, but I mean, it's like beating up goons in the Arkham games. It's like there's the big guys and then the little guys and the dudes with the shields. So, this game it's about the same, but it's still fun. The story, I was surprised by the story, because people were talking about this story like it killed their uncle. And I didn't get that at all, because I played it and I find it very interesting. It's pretty compelling. They get very weird and wacky with it, which for the setting and having the Suicide Squad as the protagonist, of course, that's exactly what you need to do with it.
Have you beat it?
I haven't beat it yet.
Okay.
I've put a lot of time into it though, and I've experienced quite a bit of the story, and I'm pretty sure I know where it's going.
Okay.
I think it's good. I think it gets a lot of hate for that too that I don't really understand. And then the writing gets a lot of flack that I understand that more because I think that these characters are written to be annoying. And for some people, they don't want to sit there and have to hear the quips that are annoying.
Yeah.
And like, I get that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's also a Suicide Squad game. Like they were always going to be annoying. You put Captain Boomerang in there, and like, you're going to want to punch him in the face. That's the way it is. But I think a lot of it is smartly done too, because like Rockstar seems very aware that not all of the jokes are going to land. Some of them are for kids, and some of them are for like MCU fans, kind of humor. But a lot of times they'll counteract that by having the characters that are like serious that you know from like the Arkhamverse will comment on that like joke and be like, that was terrible. And it kind of works because it's almost like this fourth wall breaking that you're in on. Yeah, I think it's good. Is it $70 good? I think that'll depend on the person.
Sure.
I've had a lot of fun with it. I've put like 20 hours in it at this point. I think I've gotten my money's worth. It's been more fun than a lot of other games I've bought for $70 and played. And knowing that they're doing the live service thing. Oh, I should clarify this too. The live service aspect of it is virtually non-existent. Like nothing feels forced. Unlike a lot of other live service games, there's no like time savers or anything like that. It really is purely cosmetic. And not forced down your throat or affecting the gameplay in any way whatsoever, which is super nice. If they do the live action thing right by just bringing in new characters and new maps and new enemies, this game could be a hit. I really think so. If they just keep updating the experience and putting in these fun scenarios, I think they have a hit on their hands. But I don't know if too much damage has been done by the game.
Like the narrative seems to have already been written.
Yeah, it really feels like it was people jumped on the hate train. Is it the best game ever? No.
Well, I mean,
but is it impressive and fun? Yeah, it really is.
But there are examples of a video game having a lot of kind of mixed or negative reception at first, and then getting that following. Like you look at like
Very
Days
true.
Gone was like a failure when it came out, but now people hold that in pretty high regard, and it's done very well financially now.
I could see that potentially happening with this game for sure.
Yeah, having legs.
Yeah, especially like it's hard not to enjoy it and have fun. Just swinging around like Metropolis as these characters are jumping around as a big shark and like messing up some aliens. Like it's super satisfying. The world is so cool. Brainiac as a bad guy is the only villain I think I've ever seen in something superhero related recently that felt on par with like Thanos in terms of like a threat.
Okay.
And the game has a very good tone that is like hopelessness and helplessness that it carries throughout. That is done so well and really does propel the story in an interesting direction.
Interesting. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. We'll have to.
Yeah. Buy it on sale.
Yeah.
At this
that's
point,
all
you might as well wait. There's no reason to go out and get it now.
Yeah. But there we go. A little bit of Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. A little positive reaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
the one defender out there.
Yeah, the apologist.
It's not that bad.
But yeah, no, I hope it ends up being a success and a good game. Because obviously I'm a huge Rocksteady fan. The Arkham games are one of the reasons I play video games today. And love, that's my favorite interpretation of Batman, probably along with the animated series. So that's great. Holden, what do we have going on next week?
Yeah, next week is Kung Fu Panda 4.
Are we Skadoosh.
I didn't mention it. I rewatched the first one. I think I'm gonna watch all 3 of the other ones before this new one comes out.
Cool.
I low-key think Kung Fu Panda 4 looks pretty fun, honestly.
I think it looks very fun.
Yeah. Kung Fu Panda, in revisiting Kung Fu Panda 1, that's like one of the last movies that I think I would consider like a childhood movie of mine, because I was probably 9 or 10 when that came out, but I still like watch that DVD all the time, and it holds up. That first movie is very good. So I really like it. So... But yeah, we'll do that. And we'll also do the final Oscar movie we haven't done, Anatomy of a Fall. So since the Oscars are next weekend. So we'll do those 2. If you want to leave us a request, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes or email us at TOMPpodcast@gmail.com or donate to our Patreon.
Yeah, no honest reviews, please. No 4 stars.
No honest. Yeah, we only 5 stars. So.
And if you liked Nick, remember he's only been here once. He's not guaranteed. So you're stuck with me and Holden.
Yep. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It was a jam.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very good. I'm glad you knew so much about Dune. Otherwise, Jimmy and I would have just been flubbing like, I thought, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was a cool movie.
I'm just glad I could do that.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, we were guest stars on a podcast once and they shut down 2 months later. So
Whoa, that's not a good omen.
so hopefully
Does that mean I'm going to shut down 2 months later? Or?
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with us, but
Okay.
But yeah, there we go. We have a little catchphrase that we say at the end of our podcast. So mine's adios pantalones.
And then I say love you.
And then you can say whatever you want.
Do you have a little catchphrase you want to say?
See you later, alligator.
Oh,
There
nice.
you go. Well,
Good
you're
one.
stuck
Roll
with
with
that. So anytime you're on the show now,
See
you have
later,
to say
alligator.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm stuck with that, huh?
that. Yep. All right. So adios pantalones.
Love you.
See you later, alligator.
There you go.